Let's get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Knights of Last Call. My name is Derek Melinda, and we are back tonight, to talk more Pathfinder 2nd Edition Remastered. And today we are once again joined by the Jackal. What's up, Jackal?
I'm just gonna be your friendly neighborhood elitist know-it-all today.
That's right, and that's what we're here for. We're here for the elitist takes. But joining us today, first time on the show, as I was just corrected a few moments ago, is Darth Gorlock. Darth Gorlock, welcome.
Hey, what's up, everyone?
Darth is in my mind, one of the preeminent Pathfinder 2 GMs of Knights of Last Call, not just for the stuff that he's done with Pathfinder 2, but some of the crazy ideas that you've taken the system in. And maybe you could shed a little light for the viewers on Darth, on what some of the stuff that you've done with Pathfinder 2nd Edition.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so my experience with Pathfinder is basically three separate things. When I first started playing RPGs, basically, I started with 5e, but we switched to Pathfinder, so I had like a campaign up until like level 10 or so. Then that's when I was a newbie GM. But so I've been doing a lot of northern reaches over the last 3 years, and then I'm also doing a Forged in PF2e game, which is basically merging a bunch of stuff from Forged in the Dark with Pathfinder 2e. So when we're kind of going through the rankings, I'm going to try to temper my expectations because that game's also crazy as hell. So
right.
They have a lot of broken abilities, but yeah. So
as one would expect when you combine a narrative forward John Harper game with the crunchy tactical action RPG that is Pathfinder 2nd Edition. No, but I think it's really cool, and it's one of those things that sort of surprised me in that it's been on, that campaign's been running for a while, that Forged in the Pathfinder.
Yeah. There's also been some scheduling things when I got sick. That's also why it's been going so long. But yeah, it's been going on for like a year and a half or something, I think now. Yeah,
absolutely.
So, yeah.
And it's also, I think, a cool example, because I think some of the mechanical forward elements of Forged in the Dark work well in the context of Pathfinder 2nd Edition.
Oh yeah, like the 4 degrees of success like map perfectly. The only issue is like Pathfinder is like leans a little bit more to the like how easy it is to get successes, but
yeah,
like other than that, it's like the 4 degrees map really well between each other. So
very awesome. So I mean, I assume you still have critical, right, and regular success, failure, or mixed result, and then actual failure.
Yeah, the critical failure is basically failure.
Yeah. Awesome.
Have you thought about playing Strike?
Well, it's actually funny because I mean, I think I mentioned this in the chat like yesterday or something, because Ghoul was talking about it. I was like, the amount of things I've come up with for that game where I was like, oh, this is such a unique, novel idea. This is going to be so good. And then it's just like, oh, Strike actually just did this. Oh, this is just a 4E power. Okay.
Yeah. That was, he was like talking about like everything is just ends up being Legend of the Five Rings or something, I think is what he was saying, or something like that. But
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's that whole idea of convergent evolution. I talked about this the other day, but I don't know if I was on the Discord, but when I was first seeing all the stuff that the Dungeon Coach was coming out with for DC 20, I was like, oh man, this guy is just kind of taking all these ideas from other games, Iron Heroes and 4th edition D&D. And then I met him at Gen Con last year, and I was like, oh no, he really does not know any of these games. He only knows 5e. And I was like, he's just coming up with these ideas because he's experiencing some of the same pain points and some of the, same like, oh, it'd be cool if we could do this. And so it's kind of a cool idea, this convergent. Mark Seifter always calls it, I think he says convergent evolution or convergent design or whatever. So it's pretty cool.
That's a good way to call ripping off.
Yeah.
Another game.
Well, no, but
that's a nice word for it.
But you can't. Yeah. But if you don't know about it, it's like
fair,
it's like when something's named after two scientists who like independently kind of publish their results at the same time. So. Damien with a $5 super chat. This used to be where the War Priest started to suck, and the Kyurgeon started to actually be playable. Remaster fixed that. So Damien, thank you for the super chat. So yeah, we could talk. Let's start with we have the Cleric at S tier. So let's start with the Cleric actually. So this is, by the way, up on the screen is what our rankings were last time. And we can go back and reference this if we need to. But again, for quick recap, Cleric, Fighter, Rogue, just at the top of the list. Very good at what they do. A lot of flexibility. Heal is an extremely powerful spell, and the Cleric, literally at first level, has like 3 or 4 times as many spells as any other character does in the game. Fighter is always just going to be that much better. And while class features and class abilities may eventually help other classes compete, which we'll find out here in the mid levels, especially at the low levels, the Fighter just has that huge advantage. Not to mention they get some really solid. They start with attack of opportunity or reactive strike, and they get some really great abilities, just class features early on. But and then Rogue is just pretty good. But one of the things that we really want to see as we go into the mid levels is someone asks, what are the mid levels? So for me, because we wanted an even spread, mid levels are 8 to 14. So at this point, the casters are now expert. Anybody who's played a caster in Pathfinder 2 knows that like level 5 and level 6 are pretty rough, especially if you're fighting PL +2, +3 monsters, because their saves are going to be like 5 or 6 points above where your DCs are. So they're like passing on a 4. It's just like some insane range. So mid levels is where some of the classes that were previously kind of lagging have a really chance to shine and catch up. And on the other hand, there's other classes that potentially maybe don't get to compete as much. And we'll see that some of the things that used to bump classes up from the old rating maybe don't apply anymore in the remaster. And just in case we do need to go back to it, I do have our old from over 2 years ago. These were our rankings. Now, of course, some of them didn't get ranked, but these were our old rankings from 2 years ago of mid-level class rankings. So Fighter, Rogue, Sorcerer at S tier. You can see it at this time. We didn't appreciate the true power of heal. We all knew Cleric was, we all knew heal was good, but we just didn't understand how much it just deleted encounters. And Cleric was still hanging out at the B tier. We had a Cybersmith had a super chat as well. Hi guys, a note on the Inventor. I think it gets a lot better over time because at higher levels, the odds of successfully overdriving go way up. At level 8, you likely succeed on a 5. You'll critical more than you will fail.
I've got a hot take about overdrive. We can probably get into it when we get to Inventors.
I mean, we Cybersmith. I mean, that's what we're really here to do. Cybersmith is sort of explore. Like one of the things I've heard. I've never seen a ranger at high levels, but I've heard that at the very highest levels of the game, they can actually be pretty effective and they can be pretty powerful when you start, having basically like almost no map penalty and stuff like that. So I'm curious to see if that holds up. So yeah, I mean, in certain instances, some of the things that we critique classes on become less relevant as you go up over the time. So, you know what? That was our F ranking, Darth. That was our sole F ranking from last time. By the way, when we reviewed this 2 years ago, we had Inventor at D tier. And in all honesty, the Inventor should probably be at D tier, but we put it to F just because it's a bad Barbarian and a bad Alchemist who also needs to make a check that can sometimes blow up in your face when you want to rage. All right. So, Inventor.
Yeah. The hot take of the Inventor is, if you ignore Overdrive, this is like a solid C tier class. Like the only time I do Overdrive is if you're like more with a lenient GM. Like a lot of NR and different things will have things like, as your exploration activity, you can kind of get like 1 free action at the start of combat, or if you're doing something special. But like if you're looking at like base, it's just like not worth. Like if you compare it to like how much the Thaumaturge gets off its 1 action ability, and it can still get like damage on a failure, like the Inventor Overdrive, like it probably needs to be cleaned up a bit.
But yeah, so I mean, obviously it hasn't been remastered yet, so we're that's a caveat. But in a world where they took rage, and and made it essentially a free action. We got a tip coming in.
$10, 5 for the tier list, 5 for Earth Dawn vid.
All right, Duncan said $5 for the tier list, $5 for Earth Dawn. So he's splitting. Duncan is splitting his tip between both of our streams this week. Duncan, thank you so much for that. Glad to see you supporting both games, which I think are both very fun, and I'm really hoping that we get some Earth Dawn games going on our things. Now, Cybersmith says to support Darth, just because you have an ability doesn't mean you have to use it.
Yeah, exactly. That's my thing. Like if you ignore that part, that's why I'm saying, like.
Yeah, but okay, what are we even doing here? If we're ignoring You know, if we're ignoring it.
But yeah, like Inventor, your main shtick is actually like what you do with your weapon, and like obviously the contract companion is just a joke, so that's like F- tier. Like so the armor gets a little bit of cool things. It's neat, but like the weapon can get like really cool things that you can get like unique weapons that literally can't get elsewhere. Like you can get like at this level, I think it's level 7 where you get your second invention. You can get like a grapple, trip, reach, freehand weapon that's still dealing like a D6, D8 damage.
Right,
So
that you're
like
messing with all the time because your
you're
strength.
only one behind.
You're only
one behind.
You're right. You're only one behind for this short period of time. But before we go on, I do want to stop for a moment and acknowledge Whoople, Mr. Whooplestein, with a $50 super chat says,
Hey, nice.
now I had a super chat goal, which is more PF2, please. And it was obviously a little low. Now it's near complete. He says, all spells remastered. Oh, 2025 is going to be the year, is going to be the year of Derek losing his mind. Again, I don't think we would do all of the spells, but I think we could definitely look at some of the ones, Whipple, that got changed, notably and considerably. And it's a great excuse to bring some more people on to the channel.
Yeah, and especially like the new spells too, like the Rage of Element spells and stuff like that. They're actually like really good. So.
Yeah, and I think actually what we would do, because we do have, if you go to those old spell lists, we have a Google sheet which is shared. Is I would be particularly interested in looking at some of the spells that we ranked like S or F or like D, and saying like, did they do anything with, and then look at, did they change the spell, and if they did, how did they change it? And that would be interesting. And then there's been at least 2 or 3, 4 books of new spells, and some people say that those spells make a substantial difference to some of the traditions. So I think that's pretty cool. He says Whipple says Rage of Elements and Howl of the Wild added some neat ones. Yes, awesome. Yeah, exactly, Whipple. Some spells remastered. That's pretty good. Okay, so Inventor. So obviously all those perks that you get as you customize your thing, sort of build up over time. So by the time you get to the mid-level, you could argue your free hand reach grapple weapon build is coming online. Yeah. Okay, so you're a bad fighter with a cool weapon?
Well, no. That's the thing, because you can do stuff that's unique that the fighter can't do. Like the fact that you can have a shield with having that grapple trip reach weapon, and you don't have to like that, because like there's like Lipid Contestant now, which is like you can get like a reach grapple with it. But the one thing with PF2E is like there's like a rule about like if you grapple someone at reach, it's like the GM's call if they can like actually attack you or not. Where if you're grabbing them with your hand, it's
raw,
like,
you can't.
They can definitely. Yeah. If you're grabbing them with your hand, like you can definitely hit someone's hand, right? But if you're grappling them with your weapon at reach, like especially at this level, like depending on where you are at this level, like especially lower on, like closer to level 7, and this is like especially lower tiers, which is why I didn't agree with the ranking at lower tiers. That's like there's monsters that just don't have ranged options. And even if they do have ranged options, you just get AOO. So if they do have to ranged option you while you're grappling them at range, then you hit them anyways. So
right. Those are all valid points. And Cyrus Smith's pointing out that again, the weird math of Pathfinder 2. I mean, mid levels is 8 and higher, but like you're at that weird spot. Like War Priests are in the same way, right? Where like they get the strength buff from 16 to 18 at 5, and everybody else goes from 18 to 19. So you're all at +4. But then when your train goes to expert at 7 or whatever, suddenly you all have the same attack bonus, and you're like, but wait, I'm the barbarian, I'm the monk, aren't I supposed to have a better attack bonus than you? And you're like, yeah, I have the same attack bonus as you and all this stuff. And you're like, that doesn't seem fair. And you're like, don't worry, I'll suck for the rest of the game. But like, so it's very weird to me. So I guess the question is, okay, assuming that the F was a petty F and we're at D, Darth is arguing that we move it to C. Jackal.
Yeah.
What do you say, Jackal?
So a lot of like the way that I view tiers is just like, especially when you're playing in a community game, particularly PBX, but it doesn't really, it could be any sort of community game.
Right, and
when
to
you
be
ha-
experienced, you guys, a lot of your PF2 experience has been in these community games, right? Where you're
Yes,
playing with
yes.
not just the same group of 4 or 5 people over and over and over again, but a group of 10 or 15 or 20 or 50 people. So yeah, that's an interesting take as well. But yeah,
Yeah.
Joe.
I think so. Like in a standard campaign, I think the Inventor makes more sense. And because like you can form your party around the strengths and weaknesses of the different innovations that they select. But I feel like every time I'm PBXing and there's an Inventor there, and I kind of said this last time, they're just kind of there to see how like much they can get close to being what the fighter does. It's like it's like we all know
Well,
the fighter is great.
Yeah, fighter is like A tier, so you can say like C tier is like not standout baseline, right? Like you're still contributing.
I
You're not.
see it.
you're
I mean,
not
I
below-
guess what it comes down to. C tier means it's totally playable. It doesn't feel behind the curve. It feels like you're doing this. You're fulfilling the class fantasy. That you're not trapped in a failed system. And according to you, the key is don't use your class ability.
Yeah, but it's like an added bonus you can get. It's like if the fighter
But
had like
that's
an added
bad.
bonus where yeah, but what if the fighter had like an added bonus where it had like a 3 action ability that's just like I don't know, like attack with +1. You'd never use that. Maybe it comes up once in a while, but you're not going to downgrade the fighter just because they gave it that free ability there, right?
Can I downgrade Inventor for being lame and not capturing the essence of being
we're not
an Inventor?
we're not
And-
trying to do that too much, but
My thing is so like construct companion F tier. Armor is probably D tier, but like I think weapon are in C tier there, which like obviously like if you're just looking at it and you try to like if you're flipping a coin, picking one of them, like I guess that lands you at D tier, but like I think anyone who's trying to play the Inventor with that weapon there, which I think is a lot of people, like you're gonna be ending at C tier. Like you're not behind the curve.
Gabriel says averages to D tier is what I'm hearing because and I think Whoop will provide some more interesting context. He says, I think ideal configure of an Inventor is C, but most Inventors will probably be a D because you have to be very precise to use it well. And to that point, like it's kind of like what we talked about with Alchemist. Cyber says you can trigger a lot of weaknesses with overdrive plus D6 of any type plus extra things on a weapon. And we've talked about how powerful that can be in triggering because that's an extra, especially as you get into the mid levels, right? That could be like an extra 10 points of damage or more from triggering these vulnerabilities on repeat. That is, of course, if you can hit.
Yeah. Megaton Strike is like a big like Inventor is like one of the best class to like, especially you're getting at the tier where 8 is like really powerful
Absolutely.
now. Especially with a DC 15. It's like a really good class to just say we're everyone aid heroism on it.
Yep.
Like it's heroism 2 now. It's not heroism 3,
Yep.
but it's still a good. So
Yeah,
you just go
absolutely.
ham on 'em. Yeah.
And I said this in our last thing when the only Pathfinder 2 campaign that I played in that went to 20, I was a fighter and I also played a cleric, so I had 2 characters. And then our buddy Kaz, who played on Quest for the Frozen Flame with us, he had an Inventor. And when we got to this level, the cleric would cast heroism on the Inventor, and the fighter would aid them for +3 or +4 as they eventually got to legendary, and he would Megaton Strike, like pretty much on repeat. And it was a huge source of damage, and it did just a ton of damage. And it was really powerful. And he was a weapon inventor, so I've seen the class be powerful, but it felt like you're just jumping through a lot of hoops to just kind of like, if he had just been a fighter that was just power attacking, with a 2-handed weapon, like.
Fighter's like 8. You're comparing it to an 8 tier class, right? So,
I know. But I'm just saying, to be fair, my fighter could not get us to the dungeon in a floating air-conditioned hover car. So there is that. All right.
But yeah, I think what Jackal did mention like a lot of Inventor also deals with downtime too, which is like your modification. Which
Right.
I mean, like you can also just retrain too, so it's kind of like you just retrain faster. So like if you're in the thing where that actually matters, it is actually good. But yeah, like that's
Yeah, and someone mentioned that earlier because they said, they get. I think it was Whipple. I think that you get the basically the free craft progression, which is not nothing. And Mindblown came in with a $10 super chat, so we are now officially at more PF2. So fantastic! We already reached that goal. Great job! Thank you so much, everybody. That was incredible. He says, "Let's finish up that bar. Runesmith is a better crafting class in every way." Now listen. Number one, probably. And I just don't want to be unfair, but like, you know, in my, just me, Derek, I will take Runesmith or Artificer in a fantasy RPG any day over weird guns and gears type thing, right? Like that's just my shtick.
Oh yeah, like Runesmith is like such like I don't care like how it actually turns out. Like that concept of like using the runes, magical symbols, it's like the best of like the mid-high fantasy stuff. It's like, so sick.
Yeah, remind me. I'll post something. So yeah, from this book. This was a 3rd edition book. Monty Cook, who designed 3rd edition, he started his own book or his own company, and he basically created his own version of 3rd edition called Arcana Unearthed. And there is a class in here called the Rune Thane, which pretty much does most of what the Runesmith did. And Tim played one, and it was really fun. It was really awesome. It's just like a really cool, different way of sort of representing the magic. So I haven't read the Runesmith yet, but I'm inclined to probably agree.
I like half read it. It's definitely cool. So
Cybersmith with the $2 super chat, £2 super chat says, Peak Funny is using an Inventor in Starfinder 2nd edition. You know what? I actually might like that less than using an Inventor in a fantasy game. And Whoople does say Runesmith is just better all around. Better fantasy, better gameplay, better rules. All right, so we're gonna leave the Inventor at C. Because again, I do have some experience with this class, and again, last time we ranked it in mid tier, we left it at D. But I think we've learned a little bit more about how the game works and how some of the things can shape around it. And one of the things that I still struggle with is like appreciating, mostly because I'm just like a long sword, great sword kind of guy, you know, like, and I know that like swords kind of suck in Pathfinder 2 for the most part. It's like, it's all about like, oh, I've got the spinning nunchuck whip, you know, it's like all these dumb weapons that are just, you know, like for example, when we played, it was pre-nerf, as like a meme, I was like, all right, fuck it, YOLO. All right, I'm going to be a human fighter who is raised by gnomes, dual flick maces. Let's see how good this is. And it was like disturbingly good, right? Like it was, it was like, it wasn't even close to fair. It's like, oh, you're knocked prone at range. Oh, you stood up. I hit you. Oh, you're knocked prone again at range. It was just like a disaster. Anyways, Cybersmith said the remaster also errated the unstable trait to be better on an Inventor. Is that true?
I didn't read. I know that they did do like an errata pass of Magus and Inventor. I honestly, or Guns and Gears. I honestly didn't read it. I assumed it was just like fixing like the Magus's like Arcana stuff.
It's DC 15 now, not 17. That's
okay.
I mean, that's triple.
Right,
I mean, double. That's almost double the range. Or
I'll tell you that like how many people have that DC 14 fortification rune never goes off. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you might as well not even buy those minor or the light fortification runes. It will never come up. Those are like the biggest trap in the game. I'm a firm believer in that. Damien says, well, swords aren't so bad now that hammers and flails got fixed. Ah, yes. Classic Paizo. Let's make this option better by making the other options worse. Yeah. All right. Great. And Michael had a funny one. He said, remaster shut down so many gnomish orphanages. Okay, great. So Inventor then at D. So let's take a look. Let's work back and up and down the scale. So fighter at low, our remastered ranking for low level fighter was S tier. When we did this 2 years ago, we put the fighter at S tier. Where do we want to put the fighter now?
I mean, all of the things that you said last time still appropriate. The +2, the feats, they all come on. And you know, the thing love about the fighter, you know, other than it being the best, no, it doesn't matter what type of fighter you are. You're still great. You could be a bow fighter, archer, amazing. The +2, it does a lot of, I mean, you get all the feats of the sport. There's a feat support for if you want to do open hand in a weapon, solid. If you could do a shield, great. 2 hands, reach weapon, 2 weapons. I mean, no matter what you choose, still S tier. I mean, like none of the other classes are anything like that. You know, like they have subclasses that like some are good, some have better feat support than others.
Yeah, and I know it's not probably a good idea, but one thing I really do like about the fighter is they don't have a subclass, right? So in theory, you can actually take, you know, I mean, a lot of people just end up being like, oh, I'm going to take all the 2 weapon fighting feats. You know, I'm going to take 2 weapon rend, and I'm going to take, I'm going to take all those ones. But I do like that you're not priced into this, thing. And so when you look at the feats, it's not like, well, did you take this subclass at level 1? No. All right. Well, then, you can't take it. So.
You are a little bit locked in with like the +2 though, like because you only get the +2 with the 1 weapon group, right? So it's like,
yeah,
I can't just not use my 2-headed weapon that invested all these runes into now to pick up this 1 shield feat, right? So.
Yeah. So one of the things that this is a complete tangent, but that's what we come here for. One of the great. For me personally, I mean, they've changed a lot of this, and the mindset of people in fantasy has changed a lot, like the way games work. But for me, like one of the greatest crimes that ever happened in Dungeons and Dragons was 3rd edition D&D's weapon focus feat. And they also created weapon specialization feat. Now, arguably, this happened in 2nd edition because 2nd edition had weapon specialization. But one of the cool things about fighters was it's just like though their shtick was they could use any weapon. They weren't even better with it. And they were a little bit better, but you could just use any weapon. But what that meant is that like you could literally pick up anything, and you were going to be just as good as it. So you're like, oh, I'm a sword fighter, and then you're going through the dungeon, and you find a +4 harpoon. Or try, you're like, fuck it, I'm using this now. And it's like, now, I know a lot of people who would just go, yeah, I'm going to sell that, because it doesn't, I've invested so many feats, and this is my thing, and I've got a mini printed, and it doesn't fit my character arc. And, like, it's just one of those things where I kind of like, I get it, but like the fighter, I think would just be cooler for me if it was just expert, master, legend. Like, don't mess around with this whole, like, pick a weapon group and you're better with this. But then 4 levels later, the other group catches up, and just make it expert, master, legend.
I guess, like, tangentially related to that, I like to think a lot about the epitome of, like, what each class is, either in pop culture or video games or whatever. And I think basically what you're saying is that the Final Fantasy 1 fighter / knight is where it's at.
Well, no, because the knight did get white magic spells, so the knight was more like a paladin. But I do love Final Fantasy 1, and I do love the fighter. Cyber had another £5 super chat referencing you, Darth. It says sword crit spec. So he's going back to the sword crit spec. Actually, nice for ranged allies. When I was a kobold with a gun in one of Darth Gorlock's games, I appreciated frontliners with swords, right? Because it just makes them universally off guard, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like no check for it. I think it's like one of the only ones without a check, other than like bows now.
Oh yeah, the bow check is to like pull yourself free,
right?
Pull
it out afterwards. Yeah.
Which is really not. It's trivial, but it's just the action, right? That
it's basically slowed 1. But
yeah. Question. Now, I have 2 questions. One is, my personal opinion is the intent, the reading of the bow crit is that you're piercing them to a wall.
Yeah.
But do you play it that you could pierce them to the floor?
Yeah, you could shoot them in the foot, right?
No, that's not what it like. That's But no wonder your guys' BF2 characters are so like you're killing all these monsters all the time. You're like, oh, I heard something in the other room. I'm investigating them, and then I'm going to shoot them in the foot, and they're going to be pinned to the ground.
Yeah. Well, what you're going to have the bow crit spec trigger like one time in your entire campaign where that one enemy was beside the wall.
Cybersmith says floor works, it's an adjacent surface. Okay, technically, so is the ceiling. Right? Like if
I've had someone be pinned to a ceiling before. Yeah.
How? Okay.
Flying enemies be flying, man.
All right, no. Flying enemies. No, I can actually get behind a flying enemy. I'm talking about a character, like a large creature that's in a 10-foot high ceiling. And
no, definitely not.
And you shoot them up, through their shoulder into the soul? Like, well, what? But the floor is completely crazy. He's beside himself. He said, "You would not let the ceiling work?" No, I wouldn't let the ceiling work. And yeah, Cybersmith, that's actually a good point. And fighters do get the any weapon things at levels 1 through 4 and then 19 through 20. So at level 5, they become worse in a weird way because now they can't just use any weapon. But anyways, yeah. I think fighters are still S tier, so I don't think there's a whole lot to really talk about.
The only thing I would like that you might put it to A tier, I think it's on the cusp there, is because like the +2, especially when you're getting to aid like heroism. Aiding is better. Like the +2 hasn't. Like I played with a fighter and an alchemist. Like the original campaign I said had a fighter with Alchemist. This is like old mutagenist Alchemist, so he was like at a minus like 6 from the fighter. But I was playing like what I think a lot of people play with PF2E. Like a lot of my encounters were like moderate, severe. We are actually doing like the -1 level thing, so it's like you're actually balancing it based on like one level lower than that, and it's like the +2 actually evened out. It didn't matter that much. Like at the end of the day, like doing like obviously like in those extreme fight, like obviously the thing is like in those extreme fights is when it matters. So
right. Well, for me, the real proof of the like, I mean, this isn't exactly right, but if you look at like the standard progression, a lot, even though you can crit with 10 or more, like a lot of the way that the math works out, a lot of times people are really only critting on like a 19 or a 20 anyways. But then the fighter is critting on like an 18, 19, 20. And so their crit chance goes from 5% to 15%. And that is sizable.
Yeah, which is sizable like at level 1 where there's like no bonuses running around. But at this level there are a lot more bonuses. So now you're it's still like it goes from 18, 19, 20 to 16, 17, 18, 19,
Correct.
20. So it's still like a big increase, but it's a huge change versus like how big.
Are forgetting that most people are terrible and don't buff or aid. So
yeah, fair. But the one thing to push it back up is like disruptive stance is at level 10. Crashing slam is level 10. Those are like insane. Like disruptive stance, like I'd archetype into fighter just to finally get that at like level 20.
Remind me what that one does.
It's one action to go into a stance, and your AOO triggers off concentrate now. And I believe I think it's a feat later on. I can't remember if it's in this range or not. But it also starts to disrupt on just a normal hit instead of a crit.
Got it.
Like,
so basically, it's Tarrasque Bone Flail.
Yeah.
Minus the 500-foot teleport.
Yeah.
So that's another thing I wanted to do today because we're kind of covering some retread ground. So you just mentioned it. All right, remaster. We've been all classes ranked. All right, all keywords ranked. Which is better, attack of opportunity or reactive strike? Which one do you like better? Which one do you find yourself using?
Reactive strike is like I think that's like one of the only things in the remaster I'd say like that name's actually better than what it actually and off guard I think is better. But I think that's the only thing I'd say is better.
So the other one is flat-footed and off guard, which we've been talking about a lot here anyway. So you like off guard over flat-footed. Yeah, and
strike over attack.
To be clear, I think I'm always going to call it flat-footed, but I like off guard better too because the things that make you off guard feel more appropriate than like this doesn't make me flat-footed, but it's like, but if it's disrupting me, they could have called it disrupted, and that would have been totally fine for me. But I probably would prefer that more. And then reactive strike is nice just because it has the word reaction in it.
And strike.
I will say that like that one module, like back in the beginning days of Pathfinder 2E, there's F for flat-footed, which was like the module everyone said to get. That's like it got like put into the system now, so it's not a real thing. But like O for off guarded is like just terrible.
Yeah. I remember F for flat-footed and T for target. That was maybe that was Whipple brought up the disrupting at 10 as well. Jacko, what about you? Do you like off guard? Do you like flat-footed?
Yeah, I mean, off guard makes sense because not everyone has feet. Also, definitely attack of opportunity. It will be that always and forever.
What's funny is I've gone through like a roller coaster because it was always attack of opportunity, AOO, attack of opportunity. But then 4th edition called them opportunity attacks, and we called them OAs. And for whatever reason, I made that switch no problem. Then Pathfinder 2 came out, was back to attack of opportunity. And then reactive strike, I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do it. Call Me Out says, I do miss Magic Missile, though. Here's the thing. Magic Missile is as generic as Fireball, right? Like, I get why you might change something from, like, IPs blank of blank, protected IP of this thing. Like, but Magic Missile, it's exactly what it sounds like.
Change. Yeah.
Like, they didn't change Lightning Bolt. Or did they change Lightning Bolt?
I don't think they did.
Okay, and Fireball, but
but
Magic Missile had to go. That was
like Meteor Swarm got changed to like Falling Stars. It's like a Meteor Swarm's a real thing.
Right. Also, Magic and Missile are like two of the most generic ass fantasy terms that you could ever use in an RPG. Michael says Fireball is fine, but if it was Fireball, then it would have to go because Fireball trademark. Okay, so let's take a look at another one of our S tier classes because we're here at the top, and some of these are going to have a little debate. Rogue, we rated it an S tier last time for our low level. For our mid level 2 years ago, we rated it S tier, and now today we are here to talk about the Rogue. In the remaster, still at the top. I mean,
Yeah,
Take the
I think
feats.
there's just nothing to like it got buffed lately in the remaster.
right?
Like it's not even like like getting a buff is actually like fairly big.
Yes, I agree.
But yeah, like
And by this level, you're onto the full opportunity attack
Prep,
preparation and gang up thing, right? So we've only made like one video in the last like year and a half that was actually not a live stream, and it was about the Rogue. And we basically said if you take these 3 feats, you're just a damage monster.
Yeah, and also at this level, like your caster can cast invisibility 4 on you now, so you don't even have to worry about flat-footed. You just get free sneak attack, which is already like 99% of the time free anyways, but now it's 100% of the time. So.
Correct. And if for whatever reason you decided to be a ranged rogue, now if you have improved invisibility, you can just deal out death at any level. And to be fair, improved invisibility, or invisibility 4 as it's called here, was always very good. In D&D, in Pathfinder and D&D. But yeah, I mean the rogue just, and you don't have to build the rogue that way, but it's pretty powerful. I mean, in a lot of situations, you're going to be making, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 0-map attacks per round. Yeah, with sneak attack on all of them. Yeah, that's gross. What kind of weapon? What are you saying, Jeff?
I have had the fortunate luck to sometimes GM for 2 high-level rogues that both have all of those feats, and them triggering the opportune backstab off each other.
Off of each other.
Oh,
disgusting. Yeah. It's like the Spider-Man meme, where
exactly.
they're pointing at each other.
Yeah, and like Trip and like the Flail crit spec was so good because it triggered AOO. That was like the biggest thing about it. Rogue's just like, oh yeah, if you just hit them, I get my AOO.
Right.
And I can get more AOOs.
Obviously there's a world where you don't, nobody in your party hits them, but then you've got bigger problems. So Cyber says plenty of reach, finesse, melee options. Whip? What other melee reach options are there that are finesse?
There are many weapons these days.
That's true. There are like 500 weapons in the game. Rogues do have that martial proficiency now, though, too, which is, fine. So we had a $5 super chat from Merlinin. Rogue is still doing its thing at the top of these levels. I do hope Ranger does better this time. Are we skipping Exemplar and Animus since they are new? We can certainly talk about them, but I don't think anyone's truly got enough reps with them. I mean, the classes have only been out for like a month.
I've got a lot of rep with the Exemplar archetype. I'll tell you that.
I'm
Everyone
hearing,
in NR is taking that the second it came out. So.
I'm hearing Exemplar archetype is the new champion archetype, right? It's like new, just like, just take this for free, automatic free heavy armor proficiency and all the some of the best feats. But now, so, the Dancerous Spear and the Elven Spear. Okay, so there's a couple options. Yeah. All right, so Rogue still at the top. All right, our last S tier from last time, from 2 years ago, was the Sorcerer. And I do want to kind of talk about this a little bit. At that time, Sorcerer was felt to be the strongest caster because, generally speaking, and I'm going to state my statements. You guys can come in with your own thoughts. It was generally considered that Spontaneous was better than Prepared for the most part in Pathfinder 2. Sorcerer could choose from all 4 of the traditions. But the most important part was that at 8th level, the Sorcerer got access to a feat called Cross-Blooded Evolution, which essentially let them take one spell from any tradition and add it to their repertoire. And this meant, especially if you made it a signature spell, which you could do, you could cast that spell at any level up and down the course of the game. That meant that if you were an arcane sorcerer or whatever, you could get access to heal. Or if for some odd reason you were a divine sorcerer, you could get access to, I don't know, fireball or magic missile or some other broken spell that, was considered to be pretty much top tier. And mostly it was in the context of if you were an occult or arcane, you could get heal. And heal was so powerful that was considered the thing. And also, too, generally speaking, some of the bloodlines were considered to be pretty powerful, and you get your like second or third tier of your bloodline at these levels. And some of them were pretty okay. Some of them are pretty good. So that's where we had the Sorcerer last time. So Jackal, what happened to Cross-Blooded Evolution in the remaster?
No longer free spell of any other tradition.
You pick a different bloodline?
Yeah, you get like a different bloodline effect.
And you get its effect, which is
I mean,
probably
some
not
are okay.
Some of them are okay.
Like,
is it worth it? Is it worth an 8th level feat? I don't know what your other options are, but my guess is
for casters sometimes it is.
Yeah, for casters sometimes. But I mean, it used to be just an absolute like automatic.
Oh yeah, you'd always take it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that also keeps now. That probably doesn't matter till high level, but I think does Greater Cross-Blooded Evolution still do what it did before?
That's a good question. I'm not actually sure.
Yeah, I don't know either. Let's take a look here. I think it's still called Cross-Blood Evolution, right?
Yeah, it did have to. The name's still the same.
Nope. It's choose up to 3 of the Sorcerer's gift spells granted by your secondary bloodline. So you still do get new spells, but they have to be from that bloodline. You know, so.
Yeah, which like a lot of those bloodline spells just end up being ones you could get anyways.
Yeah,
But
yeah, because a lot of times the bloodline spells you take are just like it forces me to take one of those, even though it's on my tradition list. So yeah, not nearly as good.
But I will say, like the good thing that Sorcerer still has is like one big change with the remaster was changing how spell class DC worked.
Sure.
And now it's like you can like if you go like Divine Sorcerer or something, or like you can easily go to like into Bard, pick up like all the best debuff spells. Like you're like 2 spell levels behind, but your DC is still the exact same as your Sorcerer spell casting. So like you're not getting slow at the same level everyone else is.
But
you're
that's
not
okay.
getting synesthesia. You're getting it like when it's still like the best spell for a reason, right? So
right. So
but it's just like a lot of classes can get that.
To remind me, the originally if it was non-based on your DC, right, and you weren't trained, it was defaulted to charisma, right?
No, it still was the tradition's normal like key ability score. It just that you had a different spellcasting DC. Like you used to have to be like you had like your sort like divine spellcasting.
Got it.
And then you'd pick up like occult spellcasting at like trained.
Now it's just if your spell DC is expert, it's expert.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So yeah. I mean, I personally think that the Cross-Blooded Evolution thing takes it down a peg. And I still think the Sorcerer is strong, but I think if anything has been proven out to me over watching Northern Reaches for 3 years, it's that melee rules the day, at the end of the day. Like a lot of the spell casting is kind of just better to be used as support to buff your brutes and your attackers.
That's like the Sorcerer is definitely the best blaster caster right now, I'd say. It just the best blaster caster isn't necessarily what you always want.
Yeah.
So it was just before I was the best blaster caster, and then also had the best healing spells too. So
right.
Yeah.
Gabriel says buffs always work, and that's absolutely the case. But I think there's if you're just going to be casting heroism anyways, and haste, then you could be somebody like the Bard and have a cult, and then just have all your other Bard abilities too, or be a Cleric and have heal and all the, those spells of that nature. So I think it's kind of interesting there from that perspective.
Yeah. And, a little, I mean, it's, I guess, technically a nerf, but, champion archetype.
Oh, yeah.
Being, being a little worse.
Yeah, again, somebody was talking about this in Discord. They were like, well, you're not taking into account free archetype. And I was like, well, yeah, if your class needs free archetype to be good, then that's probably a strike against it, right? And, but that is a good point, right? Sorcerer really just needed charisma, which you needed for that anyways. And you could take a 14 or a 16, and maybe there was a couple levels where you didn't need feats. So you would just, assuming no free archetype, but then you could just easily take full champion dedication. You were very easily priced into it. Bob did that. He was a dragon sorcerer. He had dreams of being in melee with his dragon claws, which of course never actually came up. But they get the dragon sorcerer. Their one bloodline ability gives them, I think, +1 status bonus to AC when they cast a bloodline spell. And so between that and the heavy armor proficiency, if he cast a bloodline spell, he was like, okay, like that's a pretty good AC for that round. So that was pretty interesting. So now Nick says Sorcerer's new dangerous sorcery thing. Forget what it's called now, but it now also adds to heal. Now not just damage, and is core to the class. It's not feat, so it's a modest consolidation for the loss of cross-blooded evolution. I did not know
Sorcerer's
that.
potency.
Ah,
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's why it's the best blaster, I think, right now.
Okay.
That and like some of the blood magic effect, especially at this level, like there's the one where you like blow up everyone around you. Like it gets a lot of good blood magic, plus it gets that status bonus to all, and it's like I think before it was like if you did AoE,
It only did to
you
one.
had yeah, now it's everyone.
Right.
So
and I think a lot of people played it as just everyone because it was a lot easier.
It was just easier to.
It was just easier that way. Yeah.
Oh yeah, actually, can you subtract 2 points of damage off that guy that has 200 health? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I mean that's the thing. But I do think it is properly placed at A tier. I think it's very powerful and it's very fun. And it's very cool. It's very and there's a lot of flexibility of the class, absolutely. But it's not like the overwhelming powerhouse that we used to see in the past. All right, so those were the ones that we rated S tier, except for the Cleric. So Cleric in our low tier for the remaster shared the S tier with the Fighter and the Rogue. And last time when we rated it at mid levels, we put the Cleric at B tier. So that's a big difference, right? Like we're talking about a range of S tier to B tier. And of course, we're kind of really talking about 2 clerics here, so we can kind of talk about both of them. And if we need to, we can even kind of rate them separately. But Darth, any thoughts on where the cleric should be?
Yeah, so there's 2 big things I kind of want to talk about here is one, I did mention that spell casting thing before. The one issue cleric has is that you're like there's not that many wisdom based casters. So like you can basically only go druid, which is still good. Like you get the damage spells, but like archetyping to get damage and healing spells is like the worst bang for your buck for those. Whereas you kind of want the buffs and debuffs now. And then the second thing is cleric was like S plus tier early levels because of you just had so many more heal slots than everyone else. Now it starts to when I was looking at my notes, I did S2A, where at the beginning of this tier, you still have so many more heal slots that it's still enough to put it to S tier. But like by level 14, there's just so many slots around that isn't that big of a boost anymore.
And I also think it's important to note that by that level, number one, let's face it, max level heals are usually overkill. Like a lot of times it's like, if you're level 13, it's like, yeah, throw me a level 5 heal, like that's not even in your top 2 levels of spells, right? That's not even targeting, your 6th and 7th. It's like, oh, just give me a 5th level heal. It'll still be more than enough. Plus, there's just everybody just randomly has a shitload of healing ability just floating around, in the party. Everybody's walking around with healer's gloves and you know what I mean? Like there's just this kind of like random assortment, even like a lay on hands and stuff like that can actually be enough to feel sizable and substantial at those levels.
Like battle medicine got buffed too with the remaster.
Right.
It's like pretty good now if everyone picks up that one general feat. So.
I do think that the cleric and heal itself is still very powerful, but I don't know if it's like the overwhelming force that it was. Jackal, any thoughts on that?
I mean, mostly just that like War Priest is awesome.
Darth rolled his eyes.
Yeah.
At these levels. And before they were not awesome.
I'm gonna let Darth talk, but I'm gonna just say I am team I don't get it when it comes to the War Priest. Darth?
Well, so I'll say so the War Priest is still good because it's better armor plus heal. Is just always going to be plus better saves than the cloth caster. So like War Priest is always good in that sense. But the one big thing they did with all of these feats, I don't know why, all of the War Priest feats have like adjacent clauses to them. Like rather than being within reach or anything like that, it's like your ally has to be adjacent to you. That thing has to be adjacent to you. Like we have a War Priest in my Forge and PF2E game. That comes up all the time. He's like, oh shit, they're not adjacent. I can't do anything here. Sorry, guys. It's just like, okay.
Well, I mean, I kind of respect that to the situation that it's like it makes the tactical positioning actually matter, which is, I think, something that is, considerably valuable, to like consider is like you get to a certain point where it's like everything's 50-foot radius, like it becomes like kind of just easy mode. So, I mean, I think that is something to be, considered. What about this Battle Harbinger? Does that substantially change the math at all?
you just lose your heal spells is my my issue with the Battle Harbinger. Like you get the obviously you get the proficiency, but like at these levels, your proficiency is actually like only 1 behind at some
Right.
points or 0 behind.
Yep.
So like the mid levels, the Battle Harbinger, like the
Right.
Bless
And don't forget
Bane
it
are good.
at like 19th level now you get Master.
Yeah, that's like this stupid.
Like I'm okay with it being late, but like when does
Yeah.
everybody else get Master at
13.
13? Just
Yeah.
give it to them at 17.
Yeah,
You know?
like even Alchemist, I think gets it at 15.
Yeah, 15. I mean,
Yeah.
if you don't want to give it to a 15, 17 would be fine. Anything that's given to you that late in the game, like even legendary spell proficiency, I think comes too late in the game. But Damien says
Raise
I
symbol is still. Oh, sorry.
yeah, Damien says I house rule to 15. So there you go. You were saying what you house rule, Darth?
Oh
Or-
no, I was just saying, like one thing to know is like raise symbol is still insanely good at this level. I think I don't.
Yeah.
I think people kind of sleep on it, but it's still like insane.
That's a
and it
new feat?
Buff warper. Yeah,
What is it called?
it's
Raise
a
symbol?
raise symbol. So it's a
Mhm.
feat that lets you, when you raise your shield, you also get the circumstance bonus to your saving throws.
Oh.
It's like a level 2 feat.
Yep, I'm looking at it right now. I pulled it up. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Especially
it's-
on like a fighter or a swashbuckler. They can just keep their Paragon's
Well,
guard, keep your
'cause
shield
it's-
up all the time.
I mean, circumstance bonus to saves has got to be pretty rare
Yeah,
in the
very
game.
rare. Like unless someone aids your save or something.
Yeah,
like,
or
that's
like
not gonna happen. Yeah.
maybe like if you have greater cover against reflex saves.
Oh
it's a
yeah,
circumstance bonus.
cover. Yeah.
But I mean,
yeah.
that's pretty pretty circumstantial too. It's almost like it's a circumstance bonus.
Yeah.
But no, that's actually really great. I
yeah,
mean,
which it's like a huge buff for like, I mean, we always talk about it like the 4 war priest. The like 4 war priest beats every single encounter in the game. It's a huge buff to that because you just increase your survivability. Like I think the issue people had with the class, like it's just not a thing at mid tier. So like before where like if the big thing people hate about war priest was like hitting too, which like I get the appeal of it. At least at these mid levels, that's not even an issue there. So that's why I was kind of like I was bouncing between S and A tier here. So
Okay.
I'm not sure. So
Nick says War Priest shines best in my opinion in a party made up of all or mostly other War Priests. Make severe encounters all day, safe and boring. I mean, this is a classic like strat like rant, right? Like just like right, like the strategy is one of our patrons who plays a lot of Pathfinder 2. It's like, you know, just sit around and everybody just be a War Priest. And it's like, it doesn't matter that you suck. No one can ever kill you. No one will ever be able to bring you down. So I don't know. I mean, I think the Cleric is good. I think it's powerful, but I personally feel like having played it, I still feel like the Divine list is limiting. And I just feel like there's a lot of spells on it that are very circumstantial. And when they do come up, they're not necessarily that great, as opposed to spells like you're like this. I could cast slow in almost every fight in the game, and it would be pretty good or okay, you know. But whereas like a lot of stuff in the Divine can sometimes feel like if this one thing happens and this particular monster happens to do this one particular thing, and the worst is when you know you have that spell and you just didn't prepare it, and you're like, well, the one time in the campaign this would have mattered, and I didn't take it. So
Yeah, like I can. When you're leveling up a cleric and like you're looking at the feats and you're like, oh, this would be really cool to use. And then you're looking at your new spells, new books come out, and you're like, oh, that's very exciting. And then you play it and you're like, oh, I'm casting 2-action heal again.
I mean, that is a real concern. I don't think that should punish the class for being too good at the thing it does.
oh yeah, that's why I was still bouncing between S and A. And it's also like like I said, I play with a War Priest in our Forge and PF2E campaign, but like in there, when you cast heal, you get a bunch of like this combat-based resource that lets you do a bunch of other cool things, so you don't feel like you're screwed over by casting heal. But it's still just like, I mean, I feel like you still got to give it an S tier because like the 4 War Priest is like a real thing where it is just that good, but. Yeah.
So I put a poll up, and I'm curious to get the folks at home. And by the way, if you are watching, all 75 of you, remember to check us out at patreon.com/nightslastcall if you want to join and be part of this community. Maybe play some Pathfinder 2 with these guys. Good chance that if you want to play Pathfinder 2, you'll probably end up playing with at least one of these two gentlemen. But as they go and as the poll kind of asks the question, would you put it S or A tier? Let me ask you guys this. Fundamentally, is heal, the spell heal, for not soothe, not lay on hands. Is the spell heal bad for Pathfinder 2?
Well, it kind of like depends on how you look at things. I mean, it makes it easier, certainly. Uh, you know, when people talk about like roles a lot in Pathfinder 2, they talk about like the healer being a healer, and you could really just think about heal as it's a crowd control spell, because you're basically having monster actions go away and do nothing.
Right, but in the worst kind of way, right? Like you're
Well, if you're a healer is your fantasy like that you want, like it's really helpful.
Yeah.
Darth.
My opinion's a bit clouded because every game I run now, I basically do stuff around heal that makes it not problematic.
Right, you meta around heal. Well, I mean, like even
yeah.
back in the old Northern Reaches, remember like the desolation and the healing
Yeah.
restrictions and all that other stuff, because it was like, I don't know. I think it's, a great example of this. I don't know if you guys saw it. Did you guys see my Eldamon episode where I went into the life element? So Mark wrote this, and basically the life element is all about proactive healing, basically giving people massive like temp HP bubbles, so that you have to like plan it in advance. And then, but like if the enemy avoids that, and doesn't eat into your temp bubbles, then you can turn it into a damage, and you can make the shield explode and like be an AoE and stuff like that. But then it's a little bit more strategic, right? Fundamentally, you're doing the same thing, which is basically mitigating what the enemy is doing. But it feels more, I don't know, empowering to me to be proactive and to make tactical decisions, as opposed to go, all right, I'm healing you. And all you're doing is undoing what somebody else did, and that always, I think, feels like pretty tough. Yeah, Kalana. Yeah, it's like a discipline priest from WoW, and I love discipline. It was my favorite, whatever it was called, build in WoW.
Yeah, I do think if you play PF2E using like only moderates and severes, which is like what the game sort of expects,
yes,
it's just like that
easy.
heal issue isn't really a thing. It's like, so like in NR right now, that's what I basically do. I only run moderates and severes, and there's like a huge time pressure thing. But like, the issue is like when you start facing extremes where it's like required, and it eats up your entire turn with something that's required. That's like a huge issue. So
right. All right. Well, the chat was basically completely split. 52% said S, 47% said A. So I'm saying A. Darth is leaning towards S. So Jackal, you get to make the deciding vote.
I'm going to go S. I think it affects the game. They can affect the game so much, and I think that's kind of the hallmark of what S means.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yep. All right, I agree. Awesome. All right, so Cleric maintains their dominance at S tier. All right, well, Darth, why don't you pick a class now that we've kind of gone through our Fs and our S's?
I think a good one to talk about is because it was one that. So there's two I think that received like the biggest glow ups from Remaster, and also like going up to these levels is like the Alchemist and Barbarian. So I'm fine with talking about either.
Okay, so let's take a look at the Alchemist. 2 years ago, at mid levels, we rated it a D. Now, one of the things I can tell you, spoiler alert, like it was F at low levels, then it was D, and then it was C at high levels, because we felt like that gaining all those versatility, and you had enough infusions to actually do stuff throughout the course of the day, which of course we've talked about last time is not as much of an issue. And so the last time we did it, on last week, we actually gave the Alchemist B tier. So we're going from D 2 years ago to B tier in the low. But how does it factor out in? What's your thoughts on it at mid levels? And does it change substantially? And does it gain anything in the remaster?
Yeah. So I'm thinking my thoughts were still, specifically in the mid levels. I think low levels and high levels is an issue. I think it's mid levels specifically. It's like D, C tier.
Oh, okay.
I'd lean more towards D. The reason I'm saying that is because how the bomb proficiency works. These mid levels, you have to deal with the fact that how bombs work in Pathfinder is there's a big gap in them. You don't actually get the +2 item bonus to your bomb attack rolls for a bit. Like I think there's like some Alchemist goggles you can get that are like a little bit higher level that kind of fix that, but then you're getting this extra item that's only useful for like 2 levels or something there. And then also you're behind on your proficiency from like level 10 onwards, because you're int versus strength there. And then you're also behind because there's like the two, they fixed it in remaster, but you're still like have like a 2-level gap for like when you get your proficiencies up. So your bombs are just like the worst they're at these levels, I think.
I've heard it been argued, I don't necessarily know that I agree with it, that that's okay because splash damage.
It is theoretically, it depends on what creatures you're fighting against. If your GM uses a bunch of like elementals, this and that, it will be impactful. If your GM grabs the random brutes from that level, which like if you're building encounters, you need random brutes and soldiers of like that level.
Yeah.
They won't always have weaknesses. So
yeah,
a lot of times they'll just end up having resistances and they might just resist your splash damage. But I will say like the ability, like the Courage, I think is like really good at this level. I haven't played too much with it at Remaster, but it's like you like combine your healing things and you throw it at someone. It's like insane healing, and it's like it comes back every 10 minutes now, so it's like reliable. But I honestly haven't played too much with that yet, so I don't know.
Because that's what the game needed, was another person that can just insane heal. That's an interesting thought. I mean, that's kind of an interesting take. Jekyll, any thoughts on that?
I think that's probably pretty spot on. The feat support, I feel like, is not super great for all different types of alchemists. Like if you want to do bomber things, like there's a lot of bomber stuff. But like if you're like playing, I mean, I don't know, are people playing mutagenist? Anyways, or toxicologist, like
I forgot that was even a thing.
Exactly. Less.
I mean, they made the poison DCs right based off of your DCs now instead of the base.
Plus, like it ignores poison,
and then it turns it into acid.
Yeah.
But like that's but you can't. Those aren't buffs, people. That's just allowing the class to function.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like I cannot stress this enough. That's not a buff. Here's what I don't get. Would it really? It even kind of makes sense because they're using their calculation and their. Would it just be why not just make the alchemist key stat int and then they attack with their int? I don't understand why that's just not a thing. And then give them expert or whatever master, in bombs, and that's it. And you give it to them at a reasonable level that they would get it at, and just call it a day.
I'm fine with like even like the gap in levels. Like I think it's like a 2-level gap.
Sure. Yeah.
Like that's like
if they got it at 7 and 15, that'd be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
In the greatest game ever designed by man,
which would be Hackmaster 4th edition.
Intelligence does add to your attack because if you're smarter, it's easier to hit somebody.
That's
generally.
right. Strength only adds to damage. It's int that adds to attack in Hackmaster. But I'm not saying that has to be true for everybody. But I mean, like, right, they understood clearly. Like, the game clearly understands this because they're like, they figured this out 20 years ago in 3rd edition. They were like, hey, rogues don't really steal shit anymore. They kind of just gank people in the back. But their strengths suck. So they have really high dex. What can we do about that? Oh, here's this thing called finesse. And we'll just give them all this option so that they can use their dexterity to hit people. What a concept. And kineticists are hitting people with their constitution, for God's sakes. If kineticists can hit people with their constitution, the alchemist should be able to hit people with their int. Full stop. So there you go. All right, we're moving it down. C or D?
I would say D.
Yeah,
but that's only because I haven't actually played with that whole courage. Like that's like very theory crafting. It might end up being like I might change that opinion if I actually see that come to fruition, but
I want to see you guys take down Darth in the comments. Let me know how elitist he is.
Yeah, I mean,
I will say like it's only mid levels, like low levels and high levels. They did fix the alchemist. It's specifically these levels your proficiency is just screwed. So
Damien says, "No way, alchemist is a D." Listen, Damien, you're not here. You're not on the show. All right.
So I mean, I guess in defense, if you want to do the encyclopedic knowledge of all of the things and know all the items, and like if you're messing around with like all of the weird random stuff that is useful for your party,
So yes, and that is fine. That's still if you know all the random garbage in the game and you've prepared them all. Damien says they can hit every damage type on a miss. So again, I know that I'm maybe weird here, but when you're like, I'm gonna throw this bomb, I have like 0% chance of hitting. Hopefully I don't crit miss and then do nothing. Haha, I missed. Take 1 point of fire. You take 9 damage. It's like,
I mean, I guess I'm playing a 4E campaign right now. Daily powers are the same thing where it's like, oh, if you miss, you technically get the. No one's ever happy to miss on the daily power.
Never.
They're like, oh yeah, I get half that. Well, this is still.
It's still
bullshit.
just terrible. It's still bullshit. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's see. Vin, who arrived, fell this off because says, I'm playing an Alchemist right now in my home game with a I think I agree with a CB. Proficiencies in the mid-tier suck, and the weakness damage hasn't scaled up yet. He says CD is good. I mean, I think there probably are some options and builds and weird random levels, where it comes in and Tama is saying, to be fair, it's more like 5 to 10 splash damage to these levels plus weakness, right? Isn't it like you add your int modifier to it or something?
Yeah, something like, and you also get like debilitating bomb, and then your splash is also like 15 feet, and you can angle in a cone, and it's like sticky bomb, and there is stuff there, but it's just like, yeah, your proficiencies are taking a huge hit these levels. So
all right, well, Jackal, you get to decide. Is it C or D? Darth
D.
is all right. We're going D.
We're
All
going
right.
D.
Hot take. Here, you don't want to hear something crazy? I would have gone C, but the things these there are things I don't know if it's a D, but I'm good with a C or D. So we'll say D plus. With the caveat that apparently once the proficiencies get fixed and you kind of catch up and everything like that, and the item bonuses kick in, that the class continues to function.
Honestly,
I
if
assume
you just use skunk bomb, you're also just really good. So.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and if you just want to spam skunk bomb for the rest of the time, you're good there. Question: is the mutagenist complete failure at all levels?
I honestly can't even remember what they specifically.
That's a good sign.
To.
That's a good sign.
Yeah.
You get 10 hit points.
I honestly like. That's what it is. Yeah. Honestly, I think the old ability was actually like, it was like free action. You get to like use a mutagen again that you used before was actually good. I think they got rid of that now.
They did get rid of that. Yeah. Vin says, I think mutagens are so garbage they should just be removed from the game. I love. Here's what I don't like. There's a lot of things I don't like, but here's what I don't like about mutagens. They're like, hey, here's this totally balanced, maybe even kind of weak buff, and so you have to take this penalty. Why?
Unless you're a great card.
Show me the Bard spell that says, hey, you get +2 status bonus to fucking everything in the game, but you get a -3 circumstance penalty to your fortitude save. You get a -10 penalty to your speed. It's like, what? It doesn't make any sense. And Sims 3 says, yeah, the bonus of a class shouldn't be, but it's great when you don't miss, or when you miss, and you will miss, and it's gonna be amazing. All right, we're gonna leave this here. We're gonna leave it at D. Jackal, Darth, we'll do Barbarian next, but Jackal, you want to tackle a class?
How about we talk about? Let's do Kineticist again. I picked Kineticist last time.
All right, yeah. Well, we don't have a rating from them from our original because they did not exist. So Kineticist. Now some people thought we overvalued it. So I'm curious what you all think of the Kineticist at these mid levels, because my opinion is that Kineticists are kind of build heavy, and it kind of like you need that. They're kind of, I mean, I think they're great, but like it definitely feels like a class that kind of has to like come online. And then like once you have, the thing that my aura does, and then my impulse triggers with this thing, and I've got this feat and it does this thing, and that works with this thing, and suddenly you're doing like these really cracked, things.
Yeah. I definitely agree. It's, you kind of get to a point where like, you fork to all the paths, and you have an aura around you that's like buffing your party, debuffing the enemies. You're doing like mass AoEs every other turn. Like, I don't know. I think it's the ability to do that all day long, I think is pretty sweet. It's very much dependent on like if your game cares about your ability to do that all day long.
Right.
Yeah, true.
That is
That's a big
very
thing.
true.
Yeah.
And I think that that is actually a slight strike against the Kineticist, which is that, you know, I'm not saying there's a complete drop off of power, but if you're playing a lot of encounters in a day and your spellcasters are running out of spells, you know, because on a pound for pound basis, a Kineticist effect is not as powerful as a max level spell slot for the most part. But the idea is that, yeah, but after 2 or 3 encounters, that caster's not going to have their max level or their max level -1 spells anymore. They're going to be down to their lower level spells, and they may not be doing as much damage, or they may not have the same kind of power or buff. Okay, the Kineticist can keep going. Yeah, but how many people are playing 5 encounters in a day? 6 encounters in a day, right? Like nobody, I don't think.
I am. But I put a bunch of things around the game and homebrewed it so much so that was forced to happen. So,
all right, so
it's
there you
definitely
go.
not the
you had to
norm.
bend it.
Yeah.
Yeah, to break it and
Yeah.
bend it in half in order to get it work. So, what about Sentinel? Is that problematic? Tree Sentinel being able to spam infinite guardian trees at max level.
I think it depends on how you like rule it. Because
Right.
there's a ruling where
'Cause you can put it
monsters
on the
can't actually
ceiling.
attack but there's a ruling where the monster can't actually attack the tree sentinel because it's an object. But then it's like you also can't attack hazards then because the hazards are technically that same type of object, and it gives it like an AC. So like I think if you have like monsters that can attack you just ignore the party member that has a huge AC beside the tree. You just hit the tree that's 10 AC and you just kill it. So
I mean, but that's still pretty good, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's still good. It's just not broken.
let me ask a question, chat. If something, you know, not a poll, just let me know. Would any person here actually say that I can't attack the tree that was given hit points in an armor class? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I would say like a lot of times it's at least run like that. It might just be that the GM's also like not even sure that they can target, not that they would rule against it, but
This is like the whole like you can't attack a wall of stone thing, right? Like
yeah, yeah, but it's basically the same thing. Yeah.
All right. So where would you put Kineticist then, Darth?
My exact notes say C or B ? D for time it takes, and then my first point is it does stuff, because like
It
wood
certainly
and earth,
does.
like Earth has pre-nerf flail crit spec right now.
Right.
Wood has like the drifting pollen stance, I think, which is like
Which
crazy.
is slow, like busted AoE slow, but only
It's
your
like
enemies
dazzle
or something.
plus slow
Yeah.
every time they're in your area.
Yeah, Bob had that.
And you aren't behind the marshals in your attack proficiency either. For most of these levels, but like theoretically, all that's supposed to be super good. Every time I have a kineticist in my party, they spend a lot of time, do a lot of things, and it does stuff that like it doesn't. It's not super good. It's not bad either. That's what I was kind of saying. Like, see, like BB is like if you pick the right things, I think it actually is really good. It just like takes a lot of time for at the end of the day, like it's okay. So
Yeah, so Vince says, are these rated on an average build, or are we taking into account the cracked options? I think we have to take into account the whole thing. I mean, you know, like if a class only has one powerful thing, and it's really powerful, but the rest of the class kind of sucks, like that is something that should weigh on it. I could say that Bob played a Kineticist, and Bob played a wood earth Kineticist, and in our Abomination Faults, and we went a little bit higher than 10 because of the way we were playing with our smaller people, and it felt completely cracked to me because if he didn't do something, he got temporary hit points. But if he did do something, he got temporary hit points. And if he hit somebody, he got temporary hit points. Also, he could, we called it nutting in your mouth, but it was nourishing nut, I think is what it's called, I think. But basically they had this free infinite heal that they could just pump out. And you know, you can only do it once per fight, but outside a fight, you could just heal everybody to full. Their armor was really good. He had the pollen aura. He had the elemental combine. I can never remember that stupid thing. Conglomerate feat that was like completely busted in terms of battlefield control. Composite, thank you. And he felt like I was like, wow, this character is doing everything, and it's somehow also just like crushing in melee damage because they have this really weird progression with their kinetic blast, right? It goes like it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's kind of it felt very strong to me. Oh, and when he was critting people, they were getting knocked prone instantly. So
yeah,
and versatile weapon was good too.
Yeah, it's like that's what like I just like in practice, I've always seen them do a lot of different things in a turn. It definitely ends up being good. I think I'm also just giving it a little bit of a lower grade because it takes so much fucking time. Like no one knows how Kineticist works, even if you played it for 30 levels. Like there's just too much stuff going on. So I think I am a little bit harsh on it because of that. But
I do think they are probably particularly good in a party that is -1 player, but 1 higher level.
Right, which is what we were doing in our Abomination Vaults. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good, interesting point. Vin says, I think there's enough cracked options to make it a B. Bob says, you could tell my kin was good because half of it was built by the patrons.
Kids, shout out.
So Vin says, I think there's another important debate point inside versus outside of combat. I think they're a B to S outside of combat and a C inside of combat. I kind of agree with that. I mean, because again, we know that their power level has been kind of scaled down a little bit because they can do things forever. And so, you know, being able to do things outside of combat forever is nice, but you know, inside of combat,
like infinite swim, like you can get infinite swim speed, infinite fly speed at these levels. Like it's for everyone in your party, not just you.
Right. So if you're playing
spell slots,
right. So if you're playing Pathfinder 2 Arena, maybe, you know, not as much, but I don't know. I'm fine putting them at B.
I'm fine with B. Like it's definitely like theoretically at that B tier level. I think I'm a little bit harsh on it just because when I've seen it in play, it takes a long time. But
right, and also I think B is a great place to be. You know, like in terms of you know, they feel cool. They have a niche. They can fill it. There's the very flexible options. You know, you can now be dual gated and you know have all these like you know cool options available to you and actually have some feats that have been built into it and you know you can kind of go down one path or go down another path. I think it's really really cool. But
unless you play metal and then
right and metal sucks.
And you get crit by the 1 PL +2 monster and you have like -6
and then your armor shatters and you're just completely fucked. That's why I will never play a what is it that's not the dragon stance monk. What is it? The earth monk? But the one where you have to be the mountain stance. Yeah, because you're like, well, I didn't win initiative, so I guess I'm getting crit by everything. It just die instantly. Vince said we can add metal as its own as an F tier.
It's like the same thing as like the construct companion there. It's like one of the options that are actually absolutely shit. I don't think you pull down the whole class because of that, but yeah.
Damien is still upset. He says, I still don't know how a class that literally can't miss attacks and can do unlimited healing is a D. You are wrong, sir. If you crit fail on your attack roll with you do nothing. The armor, the shattering metal armor thing is bullshit because that's what armor is explicitly designed not to do. Right? Like if I was wearing glass armor or like ceramic armor, then it's like, okay, there's a reason that people didn't make armor out of this stuff because when it's hit, it shatters.
But Derek, you got to remember the entire plane that it's pulling from is made of this metal that's absolutely shit.
Right.
It's like, so why is the fire plane not just like fire that goes out completely if someone breathes near it, right? So
right. And Vince says, can't miss attacks is a misnomer. No one cares if you're not missing when you're only doing 5 damage. You might as well be a rounding error and then we can just skip your turn. I mean, look, it's been said before, but when we play Pathfinder 2 past like level 10 or 12, Smith and I, as a player and him as a game master, we would just round up to the next nearest 10. So like if Smith was like 42, I'd be like -50 to my hit points. If I did, 50, if I did 53 damage, he'd be like 60. We just rounded up. We just rounded everything up because
what is this 13th age?
We don't have time for this. Yeah, like that's like I'm not playing on Foundry. You know, I'm not going to sit there and be like, okay, 173 minus 58.
Yeah, like if we start like debating what the damage is, a lot of times I'll just say like -5, -8 or something. Let's just move on.
Right.
Like that's what the Alchemist is getting. It's the move on.
It's a literal rounding error. You know, it's that thing where like someone attacked and then they forgot that their weapon was flaming. And then it's like the next round and they go, oh, I forgot I was flaming. And like the whole table has to stop while they roll like a single D6. And like, it's a big procedural thing. It's the middle of somebody else's turn. And they're like, wait, oh, I forgot about my flaming damage. And you're like, okay. And then they're like, okay, all right. So all right. And they roll the D6 and it's like 2. And like as a GM, I just want to like look at them and like clearly not move and not mark anything. And just be like, I'm not marking this down. Like, you know what? Minus 50. Just what, you know, the fact that we had to spend that much time on your 2 points of fucking damage. Anyways, I as a whole, unless you're playing on Foundry VTT, I personally feel like Pathfinder 2 starts to fall apart at these levels from a mental math or like, you know, mental calculator capability. Cause I've seen some of the damage expressions, you know, hey, make 3 saves against this one attack. Also you're
on
you're on fire. Also you're blinded. Also slowed. Also make a fort save, or you know you fall prone.
Disease on this attack, and you gotta make the persistent.
Oh,
check.
I crit too.
Yeah, and I crit. So here's some extra damage and this bonus effect, and you're off guard. And then here's the fire damage. Here's the. Does it have any vulnerability to that? Does it have any resistance to that? Okay. Here's the ice damage, the cold damage. Does it have any vulnerabilities to that? Does it have any ice? I don't care. I just don't care. Cybersmith going out like the boss that he is. He says, "I must go. Looking forward to the VOD. $2. All right, that's what. When all of you leave, that's what you should do. That's amazing. Thank you, Cybersmith. I appreciate that.
I want to dump on metal a little more.
Okay, yeah. You know what? It's your stream, buddy. Go for it.
So I think the absolute worst part about metal is that.
Thank you, Cybersmith. By the way,
there are 2 like shining examples in like pop culture of like metal kineticists that people want to be like you got Full Metal Alchemist, so many good ideas of like awesome metal stuff that you could be doing, and then you could be Magneto. Like when I'm thinking metal kineticist, I want to be Magneto.
Yeah, or metal bending. Metal bending.
I mean, okay, 3.
Yeah. There's a million options. Or I don't watch it, but my roommate used to watch it. There's that anime where there's all the women that are very busty. I know I just described like all of anime.
Yeah, you described every anime. As someone who watches anime, you described all.
Okay, I'm gotta think of something. There's the one girl and she can like shapeshift into a devil.
You're still not narrowing it down.
Soul Eater? Maybe?
No. Okay, I gotta remember this. Well, anyway, the reason it made me think of it, she like can summon weapons, and like she can like summon like basically like, you know, swords and armor, and she's like, you know, and can like
Fate.
I don't know. I don't actually remember the name of it, but oh, that's it. Thaumaturge, Fairy Tale.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
So there's this one caster that the fairy tales are coming in. Yeah. So what a shock! Everyone here is a master of anime here. Oh yeah, I absolutely loved Kuvira from Legend of Korra. I thought she was one of the coolest villains. I mean, obviously, you know.
But can you imagine if she like she used metal bending and Korra just like flicks it and it breaks? It's just like what the fuck is that?
Right. Like also what kind of like imagine if when you summoned Protector Tree from Tree Sentinel, it came in, it was all like rotted and full of fungus, and like when it took 1 point of damage, it collapsed.
Yeah,
and then
it like Fireball, Fireball specifically says if someone breathes near this, it goes out. It's like from the plane of fire.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right. So we'll put Kineticist at B, but we'll continue to move on. Damien says bunch of fucking weaves in this group. I'm with Derek. It's 50-50. All right. So you wanted to talk about Barbarian, Darth. So what do we got to say about let me do a quick Barbarian we put at C tier 2 years ago. And this last week for low level, we actually put it at B tier. And the big difference there was that in the remaster, you got the free rage. And that really solved some of the action economy issues. But so right now we're kind of sitting at BC tier.
Yeah. So I'm saying A tier here.
Ooh.
There's a few big things that happen here at these levels. One is you can finally actually pick up heavy armor, because like you're not allowed to use heavy armor normally, even if you like archetype champion, because you can't rage, but you pick up the heavy armor, which means you have 12 HP per level, you have heavy armor, you're like not actually like a good tank, but like you're the, I don't know the best word for it, like the toughest, one of the toughest classes in the game. Furious Bully is now, which is just like insanely good. Silencing Strike is here.
Right.
Furious Grab is here. And then I think this is the level where you also get like the first time you attack, you also deal like extra damage too. And then also just like the Rage of Elements, Barbarian Instinct is just crazy because they just throw on you get concealment from range attacks for no reason, which is just so much better than the other instincts. But and you can like get an AoE attack with it too. But yeah, it just like it can still do the damage. You're just not really paying a penalty for it anymore. Which is basically like why Rogue is always so good, because it basically doesn't pay a penalty for its extra damage.
Right.
So.
And now you're not really paying any sort of penalty. Does the Barbarian, does it get some kind of right? It gets the raging resistance. Did they change any of that at all?
I think it's basically still the same, where it's like some resistance. You get like your con plus some.
Yeah, it's 3 plus your con.
Yeah.
But the damage types were all over the place. Like sometimes they were really good, and then sometimes they were like terrible.
See, like, with the elemental barbarian now, you can pick fire, you pick fire, and then you pick like a level 2 feat, so you can switch between fire or cold every time with your resistance and your damage,
which is
like
good.
really good.
Yeah, that's like 80% of the damage types in the game.
Exactly.
Because yeah. Or even here, Earth is bludgeoning or piercing. That's not bad.
Oh yeah, you're also you can't see it there. There's like a level 2 feat that like expands all of those ones, which is like the really good one, where like every time you rage you can choose between them. Which there's a bunch of good ones, but I think the best one is like I think it's fire, where you start off with fire, but then when you pick up that feat, you can switch between fire and cold, which is just
that's great. I mean, that's so just like the thermal nimbus from the Kineticist, right? I think it gave you like resistance to fire and cold, because it's like, well, fire because you control fire, but then obviously cold because you're not cold. So that I remember thinking that was really, really powerful. Yeah, that's pretty good.
There's like a tactical decision there. If you're fighting a fire elemental, do I need to be more defensive or do I want to be more offensive, right?
Right.
Do I pick the cold damage or the fire resistance, which is really cool. So.
I will say that, the idea of the Barbarian in full plate does make me sad. So there's that. But
yeah. Can I rant for a second?
Yeah. Go for it.
So what exactly is a Barbarian?
Good question.
Is it just someone who lives out in the sticks and like out of civilization?
Historically,
it's someone who yells really loudly when they go into combat.
But
no, someone pointed out that Battle Shout has the concentrate tag, and so if you rage at the start of combat, you can't actually battle cry.
Yeah.
So I mean, I really think it should just be a fighter class archetype. And I realize Barbarian's been a class for a long time. I'm gonna rant some more.
Right.
It's just not so obviously Conan the Barbarian.
Right, that's the archetype. Right.
It's the archetype.
But there's a problem with that. Because Conan the Barbarian wasn't a mindless brute. He was a sly, cunning thief, and he came from Samaria. He had like this wilderness backstory, but he didn't go into a berserk rage. That wasn't a thing.
He had to spend 2 seconds just to calm himself to use anything with a concentrate trait.
So to me, like the typical the paragon of berserkerdom is who is in Record of Lotus War? Is it
Orson?
Orson. Yeah. Just the way that he affects each combat that they are in is like super cool. Like he is incredibly strong. He might hit you, your buddies,
right.
But if you point him in the right direction of killing the enemies, he is like chopping them in half. And I think that's just a much more interesting character to be playing, inhabiting, instead of just being like, all right, my damage button has been pushed.
Yeah.
And I'm a fighter.
I'm going to say something, which is that I think the coolest Barbarian was the 4th edition Barbarian, because he was part of the primal power source. And instead of being like just a strong warrior guy who raged, he actually had like these primal, like when he would go into his daily power, which were called rages, like you would bring in like the spirit of the bear. And there was kind of like a, actual primal element to it, which made a lot more sense anyways, to me personally. Plus like the abilities were pretty powerful. I personally yeah, I don't personally know, what they do myself. So,
So I'm going to posit a different barbarian mechanic for you, and I'm going to preface it with I open roll everything when I
Right.
GM. Open roll everything. Not really a secret check person.
Right.
You want your players to make informed decisions. Otherwise, they're not interesting decisions, right? There is in the video game Pillars of Eternity, which is to me the real Baldur's Gate 3, if we want to be more spicy. In the game Pillars of Eternity, if you play a barbarian and you rage, you cannot see your health or endurance.
That's pretty
Because
cool.
you're a barbarian. You're a ranger. You have no concept of like your own personal health. You're just like running around and
You can't tell
smacking
when
things.
you're like
Yeah.
bleeding out and your arm gets cut off.
Like I like mechanics like that because it fundamentally changes the play experience, which is what I think is really cool. And it makes you feel like a barbarian, which I think is a lot of fun and a lot of cool. Like
That is my main complaint.
yeah, like, and for me, I'd love barbarians to like rage to feel more like a press your luck type mechanic where like you can gamble damage. And if you miss, like you take it. But if you hit, you get to deal the extra damage. And so there's this kind of fun, like, because if you're a barbarian, like the whole idea is that you're like a crazy nutso, like you're putting yourself in this, crazy situation. The other problem I have with the barbarian sometimes is that like, yeah, you do a lot of damage, but you still have to hit. And one of my favorite barbarian rages ever was the 13th Age barbarian because it was really, really awesome and simple. When you raged, you basically got advantage. You got to attack. You rolled 2d20 and you got to take the high. But if they both hit, it was a crit. So like, like you were more accurate and you crit more and you did more damage. So it like felt like, okay, this is pretty cool. Cause like a lot of times you're like, I'm raging. I'm the damage dealer. You're like, well,
kind of like reckless attack from 5e.
Yeah.
Except like not with the crit part, but yeah.
Right.
I love reckless attack.
I don't know about anybody else.
Yeah.
I'm not a 5e expert. When Bob played a barbarian, it's the only barbarian I've ever GM'd a barbarian. In fact, once he got reckless attack at 2 or whatever, I don't think he ever made an attack for the rest of the campaign that wasn't reckless attack.
Yeah. It's just so good.
Ever.
It is like a decision though. You're making an active decision.
Sure.
It feels so good. Like compared to like the rage where you're like rage in 5, you're like, oh, should I rage here? Should I not rage because I only have 3 rages today? It's just like
no, reckless attack is actually one of the best designed abilities like in any D20 based RPGs ever because it's like it could be if you kill them with this attack, then there's no penalty, which is great because I mean, assuming that was the last enemy, and if it's 1v1, you're like, okay, well, this is kind of an even trade. But if there's like 5 enemies, and then you're only getting this, advantage against one, but then they all get advantage against you. It also has the effect of passively, doesn't force people, it's not a taunt, but it definitely encourages the GM to say, I'm going to attack you because I get advantage to attack you. And you're like, that's cool. I'm raging. I take fucking half damage. So it's like, and then, sure, you get hit a bunch, but like those attacks could have hit anyways. They just happen to hit you because they rolled with advantage, but maybe they would have hit your rogue and your wizard. And you're like, it was 80 damage. And you're like, I only took 40. Also, I have more hit points than you. And it's just like the coolest feeling ever. For me, the 5e barbarian, aside from the whole limited rages thing, which is kind of weird. But even then, if you're raging every fight, then it's not special. It should be this kind of like drop the hammer type thing,
I guess, but it's weird that you have to like choose which fights in the day that you get to have a class.
Yes, yeah, that's actually a good point. But I also think though that's because the idea is that when you do rage, you're like more powerful than you should be, and so then the implication then is that you have to pay the price. Yeah. The price is you're going to suck sometimes, which isn't necessarily a great experience to have at the game, right? So, look, I like the barbarian. They improved it. It's doing a lot of damage. I love silencing strike. That feat, I can't believe they didn't fix that feat. I mean, I guess it's incapacitation, but
it's free. Like if you strike, you just silence. It's like that one fighter feat, and I think Wrestler has it too. Is like they're off guard if they're within range. Every one of your strikes it's just a bonus to your strikes, which is already the best action in the game.
It's already the best action in the game, and now it gets better. Plus, just what we need. All right. I need you to make a fort save against slow. I need you to make a fort save against being knocked prone. I also need you to make a fort save against becoming silenced. The worst is when you know that the incapacitation rules in effect. And the player's like, you got to roll it. They could roll in that one. And you're like, this is the worst.
5% chance. Yeah.
This is the worst moment of my life.
Yeah.
That's a personal.
That just reminds me all for you when you have like the plus 20 bonus. It's like I still got to roll because I'm 5% chance. This is a 1, so it's like okay.
All right. Well, I'm gonna put the Barbarian in A because why the hell not? I had a lot of complaints about the Barbarian. Not a lot of complaints, but a lot of them were addressed and fixed. And I've seen some Barbarians and they've been pretty cool and they can do a lot of damage. And I think it's really cool that they're doing that. All right. Next up, I'll pick one here. Okay, let's just real quick here because these ones didn't get changed. So we said Gunslinger was a C at low levels. What do we think now at mid levels? Still a C. Obviously, the remaster didn't change them, but and
I'd say it depends.
I think it feels worse.
I was putting them at A because this is the level where aid comes online. +3, everyone has master. This is the time where you just throw everything in your Gunslinger. They have the deadly, they crit, and not only that, but there's actually like fake out, there's like deflecting shot, there's a bunch of like support things in the Gunslinger. Like fake out's so good on Gunslinger because you use your attack bonus, you don't need to spend the one action to set up the aid. It just such a good thing. And then you also can just turn on the damage if you need to. And
don't forget, you can also rocket jump at this level. So
yeah, and Sniper's aim is just like so crazy too. If you can pick up like devise a stratagem now to like choose when you want to need to use Sniper's aim and everything like that. It's just like it's so good at these low levels. You're just like basically fishing for crits. This is when you can actually like actively do stuff to force
that's a great point, and that kind of goes back to what we were saying with the Inventor, but it also goes to what we were saying with the Barbarian. If you're the Barbarian, you got the damage bonus, you're going to do the big power attack or whatever like that, don't just throw that out there. If you're going to invest that kind of action economy into that attack and you're relying on those big crits, to do that, some big fatal weapon or some big deadly weapon or something, work together as a team, get the buff off, get them flat-footed or off guard, set up the flank, get them ganged up or whatever, crit them with a sword or whatever, and then drop the aid. And like, it no joke, like at this level, you can, for very little cost, essentially free, like you could swing the window of attacking by like 6 or 8 points. Yeah. So that turns you from like, oh, I crit on an 8 or an 18. No, now I crit 55% of the time. That's like a huge thing. And I think it's where the game becomes really fun, honestly.
Yeah, but I think if you just go Gunslinger, you just shoot whenever. You don't. Also, called shots are super good at these levels. It comes on now too, which is like insane. I just remember that from like season 2, I think, season 1. Yeah, he just destroyed all my liches because he just made them all stupefied whenever he felt like it. But yeah, like if you're just going there, you just shoot random shots, no one aids you and stuff. It's definitely like a C class though. Right. And maybe even D, just because it feels so bad when you don't crit. But
right, it's like the Alchemist. Hey, here's a trivial amount of damage. I'm not even gonna write it down. Jackal, any thoughts? I don't know if I would go as high as A, but I could be tempted to go B.
I think Sniper, like all the things that Darth was saying about Sniper are accurate. No, I did not mean it. But anyways, but so many of the rest of the subclasses feel so bad. Like because when you're playing like the with the combination weapons and like you finally get to the feat that lets you like attack and then shoot with no map, and you're like, oh, this is amazing, and then you are getting absolutely devoured in melee. the monsters are eating
the combination weapons. I don't even know why they are printed.
Yeah, I didn't even know this was one Way of the Trigger brand. What the hell is that?
Yeah,
I think that's a new one.
Yeah, that's from
that's the combination.
Well, like I know that like to me, like Way of the Drifter is like one of the most. It's like, look how cool I am. I don't even have to have my weapons out. It's like, who cares? Just walk around with your gun.
With your weapon out.
Just have your weapon out. Like it doesn't even matter. Like it's and you're like, look at me. I could shoot this totally balanced weapon, and now I can reload it. Yeah, so can I. It's called every other weapon in the game.
Yeah, it is nice. The Gunslinger's like the only class that's allowed to use guns, so that's at least nice. You're the only
which would be great if guns were busted and OP, but they're not.
But they're just balanced. Yeah.
You know, like if a gun was like, I don't know, like, you know, D12 damage, you know,
Deadly D100.
deadly D50 or something. Yeah, crazy, you know, deadly fatal. The
other subclasses are real sad.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll put it be, acknowledging that the sniper is probably the really powerful one, and then some of the other ones are probably not as good.
It might be super boring.
Yeah, and
Also,
but like you can make it interesting with the fake gun, like I was saying, but you could also just make it super boring.
Vin says, I take back the B ranking I gave it. Guns by themselves should drop this down to a C.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm one of those people that hates guns for whatever reason. So, you know, if they suck, I'm okay with that. It doesn't make any sense, but it doesn't. Also, well, anyways,
rant away.
yeah, no, it's just like, you know what they did when guns were at this level of technology? You know what happened in like real life? You shot your shot and then you charged with your bayonet, you know, or you shot your shot and that was it, you know, like this whole idea that like they have to like bend over backwards to like, because they're like, no, it's realistic. It's a simulationist game. The gun takes 6 actions to reload or whatever. And you're like, okay, so it's unplayable. And you're like, yeah, but the gunslinger can do it. And they're like, so what is even happening? I just...
Yeah, it's solving a problem that they made.
Yes, exactly. And then making you be like, don't you feel cool? You're like, no, this is stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's better than Pathfinder 1, right? Where people used to carry all the guns hanging from them by ropes so they could just go...
Yeah, I would be interested to see if like Gunslinger's like super good in Starfinder though, because there's like the huge clip weapons and stuff like that. But,
well, remember, what was it? Actual 6-shooter or whatever, actual gun.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
From season
season
1.
Where it just like actually
it was just a revolver.
Yeah, he fired all his shots with like 2 actions or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting point. Nick says the removal of touch AC from Pathfinder 2 really did a bunch of options dirty, which were so strong, including bomber, spell attacks, and gunslinger. I was going to say you're going to say gunslinger. I was going to say don't forget about spell attacks and touch AC, which was awesome, right? Bombers, you know, Alchemist bombers. Yeah, touch AC was awesome, and I love it, and I still love it, and I thought it was a great like balancing force in the game. But like the only time it ever became a problem is like when, you know, ordinary people could like make everything into touch AC. Looking at you, brilliant energy weapon. Let's see here. Right. Yes, Nick. The problem was like once you start getting to the point where creatures were like supposed to have AC 48, but their touch AC was 7. It was a bit of a problem. Okay. Let's go next. Let's go in alphabetical order here. Bard. We had it at A, and last time 2 years ago we had it at A. And so I don't see a reason to change it.
Yeah, you get synesthesia here. You get soothe. You have slow. You have dirge.
Slow is good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
synesthesia.
you have multi-class sorcerer now. If you want to actually get some damage,
Um,
it's still just A. So
yeah, synesthesia technically is legacy content, right? They didn't actually print it in Core 1, Core 2. Is that right?
I'm actually not sure. Yeah.
I think so. That was like one of the things I wanted to see if they were going to.
It's in Player Core 2.
Oh, it is. It is, and they didn't change it, which is
They
disturbing.
didn't change that or slow.
Yeah, that or slow. Which, by the way, the Bard gets both of these.
Honestly, like I'm fine. Like the debuffs, I think debuffing is super cool. So I like having the super good your caster feels super good because you crit because the synesthesia landed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but
Yeah, I mean, this to me is like what the game is kind of all about. It's about working together as a team, and the fact like synesthesia has all the great hallmarks of the classic debuff spells, right? Which is it has an effect on a success. The effect is very powerful. It doesn't have incapacitation, and then heightens to something that's completely busted. You know, so because then you get to the point where you're like, hey, and what I also like about it too, though, is it like if you're high level, you're 18th level, you might still totally task your synesthesia at 5 because there's only one guy, you know, or one thing that you care about. You don't need to heighten it to 9 to be effective. Whereas if you are trying to be a blaster caster, the fact of the matter is if you're casting your 5th rank or 4th rank fireball when you're 18th level, it's basically you might as well be an alchemist, right? So
unless you're facing minions, which aren't in PF2E.
Right, unless you're facing minions, in which case, well, not only are they not in PF2E, but if you are facing minions in PF2E, it means there's a lot of them, and they're lower level than you, which means they don't matter anyways. And like everybody's going to be able to kill them because they're just going to go apeshit on them. Also, they're going to miss everybody. So like in my personal opinion, like PL -3 creatures basically don't exist in PF2. If you even remotely, if you're one of those people who are like, yeah, my high strength, low dex fighter is wearing leather armor because that's what I envision his character to look like. If you're one of those players, like, okay, be afraid of the trivial encounter. But if you're wearing
I'd
full,
say, PL -2 to like PL +1 is like the best range, I'd say. So.
I agree. I would even go -2 to +2. I think that's.
The issue with +2 is like you use up so much of the encounter budget, you can't do other cool
You're
stuff.
always
like have all the rolls.
I've never heard anyone talk about encounter budget as much as Darth talks about encounter budget.
I run my PF2E games like 4E. I pick the encounter. I throw the brutes in there. I throw the soldiers in there. I make all the custom things so it all works. So
yeah. And you know what? And it works. That's the key thing. It does work. But yeah, so I think the Bard is pretty good here. So I remember reading. So Vincent, I remember reading Heal, Slow, and Synesthesia in the remaster and realizing they were proof positive that Paizo does not play their own game. I
think they might. It just Synesthesia isn't that good if you're in like a moderate fight.
Well, the other problem with Slow, in my personal opinion, and Synesthesia is that if they're great spells, and then on top of it, it might as well say critical failure. They're just dead. Like it's like
you win.
Yeah, it just you win. I mean, again, the famous example of this from Abomination Vaults is the kind of boss in a weird way of the first adventure is Volok, and he's a spellcaster. He's like a worm that walks. And
spoiler alert.
Smith won initiative and cast low on him. He crit failed, and I was like, well, I just took him off the map. I just said he's dead. He's just dead. He's a spellcaster that has one action around. Like what? Also, right? And like you're like, well, yeah, but what if how did he cast it? Slow only has a range of 30 feet. Good thing that the final boss fight room was 20 foot by 20 foot. It was just too much.
He has like 15 movement too. Or
yeah. Oh
like
yeah.
That.
He also couldn't. They could. Yes, you're absolutely right. His movement is only 15, so he couldn't even get away. It was just like, and I looked at him. I looked at the board. I looked at him. I looked at the board. I said, I'm not going to disgrace this guy by like making us play this out. I'm just going to remove him and let him have some dignity, And in fact, we stopped playing Abomination Vaults after that first adventure. Well, later we went back to play it again, and I said, hey, how about we'll kind of like pick up where we left off, but some people have new characters. But here's the deal. I want to pick off at that Volok fight because I want to see how it goes with if he doesn't just get immediately crit failed on the slow. And, it worked out well. But yeah, any case. Yeah, Bard's great. Good stuff. Next, the Champion. I have no idea. Now, I've historically, so we rated it B. 2 years ago, we rated it C. My thought on the Champion used to be, this is the level where, to my personal opinion, like the Champion reaction doesn't feel as powerful and the range of it starts to feel more limiting. And so I always kind of felt like, and like a lot of other classes now, I mean, sure, like they kind of get expert armor at 7. So like they're a little bit ahead on the AC game, but I don't know. And the monsters become more maneuverable. I just feel like the Champion thrives better in a world where everybody's in a 20 by 20 room and, nothing's moving that fast and everybody's within 15 feet of everybody. But that's my personal take on it.
They did fix that in the remaster. The expand aura, especially at these mid levels, expand aura I think just works now. It's just one action permanently, which I don't know why it's still one action, but like it's absolutely useless at low levels because you never spend one action just to increase it. But now it's just like it's not even an action anymore. But besides the point on that, you also get like Retributive Strike gives everyone else the ability to strike now at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there
are
a lot
all
of
good
things.
things.
With the Champion. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just you still have the issue of like, why am I not just playing something else and archetyping into Champion? Like obviously you lose that extra Retributive Strike, but like Expand Aura is a low level feat. Everyone get that now.
Has like the whole like alignment shift sanctification thing, does that change anything? Does the damage types really matter or anything?
Not really, no. Like the good thing is you get spirit damage, which is like more applicable now. I think some of the things used to have good damage on them, which wasn't always applicable.
Right.
But it's not like enough to change. Like I still think like with all that stuff, like it gets like a free damaging rune too at these levels. Like I think it's like you could argue like C or B. Like it definitely does what it's supposed to do. And
Yeah.
it does it really well. So
Yeah, I actually agree with that. Jackal, any thoughts?
Yeah, and I completely agree. Is what it does useful, or like it is really good.
I mean, let me put it this way: you're doing a 5-man in a PBX raid, final encounter, PL +3, PL +4 type scenario.
It takes a very specific.
Do you want a champion with you?
Team, I feel, that wants a champion, and I don't think that is the best team. I think really that I think the party that we constructed last time, the old fighter, rogue, cleric, bard, witch is pretty darn good. But anyways, if you are in a party, playing a campaign and you're building towards the champion's strengths, it is solid. I just don't sometimes just get someone to kill the thing instead of like resisting like a few damage at a time.
Right.
Well, you're gonna take damage eventually.
Yeah, but heal exists. So
Yeah.
like if you just replace it's like, okay, I'm dating myself here, but it's like when I used to play Final Fantasy as a kid, I used to be like, oh, I'll have a fighter and then a white mage and a black mage because those are cool. And then it's like, oh, am I going to take a black belt? Am I going to take a thief? And I was like, why am I taking this class? I'm taking it to do damage. I should just take a second fighter,
Second fighter, yeah.
And so, as you grow up as a kid, you think you have the fighter, black belt, white mage, black mage. But as an adult, all right, you have 3 fighters and a red mage, right? Like, and so, or 2 fighters, 2 red mages. That's also very good too. Because you're like, you know what? Most of the time, I'm just attacking. Like, if you think about the number of times that you're just swinging the sword anyways and doing damage, and as we always say, the best condition is dead. But, if you're saying the champion does what it does, and what it does is okay, I think that makes it a C, right? Like, it's just totally average. It's not like overperforming, is it?
Like, I think the Retributive Strike and giving other people the ability to strike is actually pretty good. And, like, I haven't fully tested it out yet, like, seen it in play, but, like, I think technically, like, with the new shield focus spell, you can actually get, like, I forget what it's called, where you can like shield block for your allies and stuff like that with the shield spell now. Like, you can actually be like a real defender now and like actually protect people, which is pretty cool. Like, I don't know how useful that is though, but like I think just the Retributive Strike itself plus the extra strikes I think puts it to B. But you could also argue that like anything and just take Archetype, pick up Retributive Strike, you're like halfway, 90% of the way there.
That is only one of the subclasses.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. So I remember one of the things that got talked a lot about, and we had a champion. Nick was a champion up to like level 12 or whatever, but he was a lawful good paladin. So he was a lawful good champion. So he was a paladin. So he had the Retributive Strike. But everybody, I saw a lot of people talk about the neutral good and the chaotic good option, which are now not necessarily tied to alignment. But the one was like the liberating step, and the idea was like, oh, this could totally mess up a boss's turn because they stride and then they swing at you and then you step away and now they waste their third action or whatever. Does that actually ever happen?
No, because everyone takes Retributive Strike, because why would you want to waste the boss's action when you can just attack him and then someone else can also attack him now, and then your rogue who has the gang up prep opportune backstab can also attack them now. It's just like
nothing's better. In other words, strike is better than step, is what you're saying.
Strike's better. There's also the one that gives you like a free escape, and it's just like you have unfettered movement or whatever the new name is called. Like, I like
Redemption.
Redemption's the one that gives them a -2 penalty or something.
They either
something like that, right?
Yeah, it's they either don't take they don't deal their damage, or they deal their damage and take a debuff.
Like enfeebled or
enfeebled 2 or stupefied 2, I think.
At the end of the day, so Darth wants to put it B. I want to put it C. Jackal,
I think C is appropriate.
All right.
I think Retributive Strike.
I played a paladin 4E. I could never rate the Pathfinder 2 champion high. All right, good. So we got a couple left. We got about 10 left, which is great because it's 8:50. So okay, Witch. All right, so Witch we had at C tier, and then we had it last week. We had it at A tier, and a lot of people were saying like Witch is busted, OP, resentment, yada yada. Epps is in chat saying S, which is so good. Damien is saying S. Is it S?
Resentment is definitely yes.
Okay.
And honestly, like some of the Howl of the Wild ones are definitely like A tier. Like all the other PC, it was a PC 1 or PC 2, PC 1 I think. All other PC 1 ones absolute garbage other than Resentment. But like the Howl of the Wild and Resentment are actually like really good.
Damien says slow and synesthesia, but with resentment. I mean, that's actually you know what? That's good enough for me to put it to S tier.
That's gonna be my point. Like synesthesia slow, your success turns into a failure.
Yeah,
and all you have to do is use your other one action debuff spell to debuff something else.
Yeah,
to sustain it.
Yeah, that's
Resentment's so good.
Yeah, that's painful. That's almost like Derek goes, okay, you got it slowed and synesthesia, and I'll just take it off the board. You've completed the puzzle. You know, it turns out this was actually a puzzle fight. If you cast these 2 debuffs on it, it's dead. It just dies immediately.
Yeah, I actually had to when I was re-rating it for the stream, I always thought it was like one debuff that got extended. It's just
it's all of them.
Yeah,
it's all of them.
Yeah, it is just that busted. Yeah,
it is really good.
I think the rest of which is probably A. It's definitely strong. Like you're getting a whole bunch of different hex spells with all your whatever they.
But I love that they get those one action. You know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those spells.
And like now it's like the one that the resentment gets is also like a sickened one instead now.
Right, which is even worse because now it's like you can't recover from it. All right, now you can recover from it by retching.
The one thing against them is that like I said, like I think archetyping on these spellcasters is a big thing with Remaster. It's like you go into wizard. It's like wizard kind of sucks ass. So it's like I guess you can pick up some damage.
Poor wizard. Poor wizard. It's so tough. Why would you be a wizard when you could be a witch now? It doesn't even.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't really make any sense. Nick says, I'm still in team witch is A, sorcerer is B. You got to account for how many players won't pick resentment. I don't know, Nick. Resentment seems really edgy and over the top, and that's what a lot of people go to the witch for. So the power gamers are going to go resentment because busted, and then the edgy people who are like, I want to be a witch and I want to resent everybody, they're going to go resentment. So I think like a good 60-70% of people are going to go resentment. So you got to take that into account.
And honestly, like a big thing, they like cleaned up all. There used to be like 20 feats for like
your hair,
claws, and getting your hair, getting your claws. Like add 1 bleed damage to your claws. They combine this also. It doesn't waste space anymore, so that's nice too. So
you could have just deleted them. It would have been the same effect.
That would have been nicer, but yeah,
right. Vin says again they do not play their own game, although he does somewhat agree with Nick. You know, I could see a world where the sorcerer is B and witch is A, but I mean I think that the fact that they do have these really powerful, you know, game breaking type abilities, and they obviously are aware of it and obviously haven't errated it, so it is what it is. All right, witch S tier because it's probably too good, right? Resentment's too good. I mean that's pretty much what it is. It's probably S++. All right, so next let's do the druid. I have no idea where to put the druid. The druid was a B, and the druid was C. So we had it at B or C, depending on the time of the year. Primal.
I think conveniently for Northern Reaches Season 2, when there were no druids because everyone who wanted to be a druid got the free archetype of druid. After Rage of Elements came out, I think that was actually like a solid, really solid class.
What did Rage of the Elements bring?
So like if you were like not a caster, if you were just like a regular fighting marshal and you had free archetype druid with you, they have a bunch of like summon elemental weapon things that are really solid, that you could like scroll at around this level. Would those be super useful on a regular druid? Maybe not, but
like my thoughts on that is like a lot of that good stuff with the druid is like you can get that with like a primal anything else, like any other primal class. So
right, because the druid is obviously partially primal.
Yeah.
And I think we can all agree that it having shield block matters a whole lot less at this level. That, you know, at low level, I get it. Level 1, level 2, you know, having that extra shield block could be nice, you know. But when you're like, haha, take 53. all right. Take 49 and your shield's destroyed for all time. But yeah, like anybody can pick a primal. So what does the druid really get, right? It gets its class features and it gets feats.
Yeah.
So are the druid specific focus spells, are the druid specific feats really pulling it above, some of the other classes?
One is good, but it's the first one you get, and anyone else can pick it up at this time. It's like the Thunder Strike or whatever it's called, the one damaging one that the one gets. That focus spell is actually good. It's like very
Is that
similar
from
damage.
the storm?
Yeah, I think Storm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a D12 of damage, and if they fail, they're clumsy too.
Yeah, Tempest Surge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, but it's a first level. Anyone can grab that if they archetype Druid now. So it's like I'd say that's like the one thing that Druid has over everyone else. And like all the wild shape stuff is just like constant. And like focus spells auto heighten, so you don't need to worry about grabbing it from someone else. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that Tempest Surge is a powerful focus spell for sure. That being said, they do also get access to heal full out. So yeah. I mean, I think that's pretty powerful.
And they got Wall of Stone at this level, which wins fights instantly. So
right, especially if you
like I said, like any other like Primal Sorcerer also gets those things. So
right. That's true. And
actually they do a little bit better because they actually get the extra damage on those spells. So
do the Druids get any like particularly good feats that stand out?
No, I was looking through them all. I didn't see anything that was good.
There's
like some what? I think you get your like greater one, which all the greater focus spells suck.
Yeah.
Or whatever they want to call it. You get a bunch of like wild shape stuff, which wild shape's only good if you do that like weird thing with like fighter where your bonus is actually higher, so you get like a plus due to it or something like that, which is just like this weird off, which I'm not even sure if it's actually good or not. I've never actually seen it, so
yeah. And by and large, shape shifting is just not a thing in Pathfinder 2, right?
No.
Yeah. It's sad because obviously it used to be busted beyond all belief, but
yeah, like these level 14 feats. I'll read a few of them to you. Timeless nature. With primal magic sustaining you, you cease aging. The overflowing primal energy gives you a +2 status bonus to saves against diseases and primal magic.
Yeah, your Paragon level tier feat, 14th level is you can't age, which is like 5e monks I think get that at like 5th level or something.
Well, also all druids just used to get that. It was called Timeless Body, and you just got it. I mean, like the true sad story of a lot of things in Pathfinder 2 is they took things that everybody just used to get automatically, and then they made it so that you now have to take a feat to get it. But they were like, but we gave you 10 feats or 11 feats, and you're like, yeah, but I used to just get that for free. Like,
yeah.
So it is literally 50-50 in the poll on B or C. So where are we coming down on this one, boys?
I think it's solid C. It gets carried by Primal, which anyone else can get. Like I said, archetyping is good. It can really only pick up like Cleric now, which like you don't want to pick up Cleric archetype in that scenario because your heal is so far behind, whereas like the debuffs and stuff is actually good. Yeah. So I think it's just C.
Yeah.
Which primal is it? The worst primal caster, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Which primal?
Well, which primal, sorcerer primal, druid primal. I think those are the only primal casters.
Summoner technically, but it's not full caster.
Yeah, it's a wave caster. I don't count it.
And is Animist now half? No, it's divine plus it picks up the other stuff, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. I mean, I'd probably rather be a sorcerer or a witch than a druid, I guess.
Yeah, like the Howl of the Wild witch ones that use primal are actually pretty good. So.
Just because, again, I'm biased, but like I remember when like it kind of did this to the bard too. It's like they put so much of these classes now into their spellcasting, and like I remember when the druid was like the shapeshifting class and the animal companion class, and they were like legit beast modes, and like I would love to see that, but like they're like, well, no, but we have the summoner, so that's like the summoner's the pet class, and it's like, okay, so then I have this animal companion that's kind of mostly useless, Yeah.
And you could just take Beastmaster now.
Beastmaster.
And you're at the levels where your animal companion is just your flanking tool. So,
right. It's just a flanking tool. Self-confessed cynic with a $2 super chat says, can druids still prepare anything from their list? They can. Yeah. But they are still a prepared caster. And that is definitely, a thing. Hell,
I would say like the primal is like the worst one for that prepare. Like you get some of the weather stuff, but you don't really get like that like really solid utility from like Arcana where like being able to prepare and pick other things would actually be really good. So
Yeah, I mean, I remember when summoning was broken in 3rd edition, and druids had the ability to spontaneously swap any spell slot out for a summon Nature's Ally spell, and that was really powerful because the animals were so busted. I don't know. I just like I like that side of them, and I feel like that is just very underrepresented at this level. And like that was always kind of the thing. Like that was something that came online when you got to this level, was that ability to shapeshift and change, and it just doesn't seem like it really delivers there. So
I'm sure it sounds like D to me.
No,
I would, like that's it. The primal list is so like primal might be the
It's
best
got
list.
any class with
It's a
heal.
good list.
Any class with
Yeah,
heal
it's a good
can't be
list.
lower than C.
But yeah, like if you're looking at the tier list, like it is worse than the other primal options. So
And we have
the other
look,
primal
we have
options are like very.
we
high
have
up
Witch at
those.
S, and we have Sorcerer at A. Then there's a whole gap, and then we have
Yeah.
Druid at C. So
Yeah,
I think we're good there.
you won't feel bad picking
Alright.
Druid. I'll say. So I think it's C is good. Yeah.
All right, Oracle. So we had Oracle originally at D. Last week we put it at B. So big change. So where do we want to put the Oracle? B or D? Those are the only options now.
I mean,
would say,
I think go ahead.
no, you can go.
B is, I think it's solid. I think it's solid. Like you said, heal is good. And now they get to cast more spells. Now they're not obviously being hampered by the completely nonsensical curse system that they were hampered with before. I'm happy to have an Oracle along.
All right.
Definitely. Like,
That-
and they actually, it's weird. Their divine casted can actually do like legit damage now. Like debilitating dichotomy at these levels is actually good. You get that, like, it's really early on, that one free action after you cast a spell, they take more damage later.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and like you can pick some of these curses that are just like not an actual curse and not a downside basically at all.
Right. Which
And
is what PF1 used to do, right? Like you could
Yeah.
meta game and kind of car up your curses so they didn't really affect you. But then like Pathfinder 2, when they first came out, they kind of tried to be like, yeah, we don't want people to game the system. And then with the remaster, it feels like you can kind of game it back a little bit, which is I think,
because there's no like restrictions on those subclasses now. So like you can get like any of the feats that you want. So you just pick the worst, like not the worst, the best curse for you, but like it's a worst curse. And then you can just pick whatever you want after. And then there might be like one time in your campaign that the curse hurts you.
right.
But yeah.
Right. It's like the curse is now like you gaining like a druid feat, right? Like where it's like, oh, if they happen to use primal magic and their subtype is Fey and the damage is fire, oh, you're in trouble now, boy.
Yeah. And then that's like combined with like some of them. I think one of them is like you end up becoming like stupefied, which is just like, what the hell? How does that balance with this other one at all? But yeah, I will say like it's such a cool. It's also like a really, which I don't know if this factors in the tier ranking. Like playing with as a resource, like your curse level and how far you can go up. I think that's like the real like mechanical cool thing about it. You just ignore what the curse actually does to you.
Well, it's kind of like we were talking about the Barbarian, right? Which is where it's like, how much, how do you manage this resource? How do you press, how much do you want to push yourself? Is this a situation where you can do it and get away with it and basically get something for nothing? Or do you actually have to be concerned about it and sort of manage it? Vin does say, I miss having meme classes that we can just automatically give an F to. Damn you, Paizo, for doing a good job at fixing some of these classes. All right, we might as well get this over with. Wizard. Now, last time we gave it an A, and 2 years ago we gave it an A. Last week, Jackal and Whoople gave it a C. So we went from A to C. Now, I used to posit that Arcane was the best tradition. This is before I understood the power of heal. Arcane is still a very powerful spell list, right? You get all the damage spells, you get all the debuffs, you get a good chunk of the buffs. Plus, you get all like the weird like illusions and enchantments. The only thing you really don't get is like a lot of the defensive buffs and, of course, the healing. In fact, it's the only tradition that does not have a main source of healing in the form of either soothe or heal. And we know casters kind of suck. And the witch is a lot better now. And could be any tradition. And can have a walking cauldron. So, and a really cool cat. and they got rid of abjurers and evokers and conjurers, and
Yeah,
they
which is like the biggest debuff like out of any class. I
and
think.
they replaced it with a bunch of random nonsense that no one will ever remember.
Yeah. Like the only thing I'd say in the defensive wizard is like spell substitution and spell blending. If you're in campaigns where those can matter, like you're in one where you only do like 1-2 fights a day,
Right.
or spell substitution where it's like you're in a thing where like being able to spend 10 minutes to switch a prepared slot is actually like a good thing. It doesn't make it like amazing.
Right.
I
Hey,
think
for
that's the only reason you pick the wizard.
for 10
So.
minutes, you can kind of almost be like a spontaneous caster. It's like
Yeah.
that's like equivalent to like the barbarian being able to concentrate by blowing an action and a feat, you know, like while raging.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, and like you at that point you're basically just replacing what you could do with just scrolls if you just pick those scrolls of like those
Right.
utility things anyways.
Right.
Like it's still you save some money there. That's why I'm saying like it doesn't put you up. I think because of those two things, like it's at least like a C tier because it does what it does. You get Wall of Stone, you get a lot of utility, like, but it's carried a lot by the arcane thing. It's kind of like the druid thing. It's like it's carried a lot by its spell list, and other classes can get its spell list and kind of do better stuff. So
like here for me personally, this is what I would want from the wizard. What's it called? Arcane Recall. I can't remember what it's called. The one when you're universal, the old one.
Drain Bonded.
Yeah, drain bonded, whatever. It's stupid, stupid item. What that should be is it should be that you get one spell slot a day in each of your levels that you can cast any spell from your book. Like
that'd be dope.
that would be awesome because then you would feel awesome about having spells in your book and it wouldn't be completely out of the pocket, but it's also like I am the wizard. I have a solution as long as I've got it written down. And I love that. Like, and instead what people do is they go, I have 755 scrolls. You know, like I have one scroll of every single thing, you know, in the game. And I just think that that's a lot cooler. And I think that's a lot more fun. For me, the wizard is like, they've got it planned. They're the mastermind, you know, they've already thought ahead. They have this thing ready. And it's kind of like a form of like flashbacking from Forged in the Dark, you know, in a weird way. Like you could almost even, if you wanted to, you could be like, the wizard has a slot that they had prepared it, but we don't say what they prepared until they actually need it, right? It's almost like you could view it like that, right? Like if you want to be more narrative about it, or you could just be like, they can just channel it forward. But it's like, no. I knew at the beginning of the day, I saw the slight, and I calculated that we would need this spell, and I actually prepared it. I don't know. For me, that's where the wizard I think is is cool, and it doesn't have that. It just doesn't have that. So
yeah,
I'm fine with giving it a C. I mean, I'm not going to give it anything lower than that.
Yeah,
but
it does what it does. You're not going to feel bad playing it. It just doesn't. It just baseline, right? Like it just does it. So.
Do you have a witch in your party at the same time? You might feel a little bit playing it.
Well, I mean, hopefully you're not playing like a wizard and then the witch. Yeah, it's arcane too, and then you're playing a summoner who also went arcane. You're all in the same party. You just feel like shit.
Yeah, we get a couple of things here. Boothby's hello. Wizard's the only teleport. Damien says Wizard's the only class that can get teleport without the GM's permission, which is kind of a bullshit thing because like the GM will just be like, still like no. Uncommon actually means nothing. You know, like I think the witch can also, at least they used to be able to.
That one like revive.
They can get
like,
raised dead without the GM's permission, and it's like, you know, it's fine. But Clayton says, literally just won a combat on the first turn with a wall of stone on my wizard today. Oh yes, we've all been there. It's
like. That's the weird thing about like it's technically S tier because it has a wall of stone
right.
and slower. Like it's up, but yeah.
Vin says, and Damien has kind of cool. Says Vin says I'd want a divine font, but for arcane spells. Sounds like Derek's on a similar line of thinking. And Damien said arcane font, but only for like out of combat / utility spells, which I think is really cool too. Like I played a lot of wizards in D&D, and I love like casting clairvoyance and seeing into the next room. You know, now you don't need it because the investigator like looks at the door and goes, "Oh, that orc's my mark." You know, it's bullshit.
Yeah,
and like
they did something like that for Magus, where it's like, we know you can't do utility spells all the time, so here's like a couple of utility spells that you can always just cast to like get some of that wizardy flavor. But then the wizard, they're just like, you can pick one of these 5 spells.
Yeah. Well, Nick, the problem with scroll scaling with the user's level instead of the crafter's level is a game design misstep. That's actually not the problem. The scrolls are locked in at the level that they're in. The problem is the DC. And the old days, if you're like, oh, I'll just take this slow spell at I'll make a level 3 scroll of slow. The DC was shit because it didn't use your DC. It was DC 14 and you couldn't change it. And so by the time you're using that at higher level, it essentially did nothing. Now you're level 18 or 19. You could literally have infinite scrolls of slow if you wanted. And the DC would be your full DC with your legendary proficiency and your high int. And so that makes the scrolls, I think, very problematic in Pathfinder 2. And Alex is right. Those spells should be rituals, which they were in 4th edition. And then Pathfinder 2 stole that and brought it into their game. They even put rituals in the game, and then they totally ignored the system and have never talked about it ever again. It blows my mind.
Can we bring the Fabula Ultima rituals in?
Right, which is like awesome. The way Fabula Ultima does its spells and its rituals is...
I hated rituals when we played Fabula Ultima, just because the cost of them mostly. Because
okay.
It's like, oh, you can do that, and then you use like all of your magic and all your IP to
you need to go
get
run a
more
quest,
mana.
man.
Yeah, but
you
gotta get the special item that cuts it in half.
Yeah.
Well, because otherwise, ritual says solve any problem. Yeah.
I see why they had to do that because it's that big. Yeah. I think like Dungeon World does the same thing where it's like you do this ritual. Like this is the quest you have to go on to solve the problem.
Dungeon World is the GM will give you 1 to 4 things that you have to do, and like once you do those, it's complete. There's no check. There's no but it could be like you have to kill a unicorn, at midnight on the full moon with a silver weapon and slice its throat open, and you're like, oh shit, that's some shit. And you're like, yeah, well, if you want to bring back your friend from the dead, that's what it takes. You got to go full Voldemort on it or whatever. But yeah, I agree. Rituals are grossly underutilized, and they did my boy dirty. R.I.P. Wizard. Investigator, the class I hate. Last time we gave it a D 2 years ago, and somehow it ended up last week at C. So, Investigator. It's not a D, but I hate this class, and I hate the way people play it, and it's stupid, and it should be an archetype even at the mid levels. But now with your stupid archetype, now you got all your dumb archetypes that have come online, and now you can, spell strike with it and arcane archer with it and do whatever nonsense you're doing with imaginary weapon. And I get it. It's very powerful because I've been following his trail for the last 5 seconds. Oh yes, I know his ways like I was born to them.
They made it so easy now too. It's easier than it was.
They somehow made it easier and less. It's just like that change to me tells me that Paizo does know, Vin, who's playing their game. And you know what it is? People just in an endless stream of combats. That's what that's telling me, who doesn't do anything else in the game. Anyways,
yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, it's like if you go that path, it is like an AT. If you don't specifically start picking Eldritch Archer and stuff, it's like a C or D. So I don't know what to do with the class.
It's a class, like you're saying, it has this really powerful ability that it itself can't use.
Yeah.
But if it can piggyback onto something else and potentially multiple something else's, then it can become very powerful. So yeah, it's a weird place to put it because like if the class isn't good unless you free archetype, what is that saying about the class?
Yeah, exactly. And at this point, you can also just be like a Magus and just pick up Devise's stratagem too. So you can like mimic what the Investigator's biggest thing. And also now, like I said, like it's not that big of a thing, but like your subclasses used to do like nothing for Investigator, and the one thing that did anything was Forensic Medicine. Now that's nerfed because everyone can just pick up Robust Health. So it's like your subclass just doesn't do anything at all. So
yeah. All right, we'll leave it at C then. We'll take it down a notch. I just think that, again, it's a very powerful class if you're taking a bunch of archetypes with it.
Yeah, the caveat that you can make it an A, but I think if you're not doing that stuff specifically, like C is good.
So there you go. If you're watching this and you're not that kind of hardcore group, show up with an Arcane Archer Psychic Investigator and watch as your GM dies inside because you guarantee crits off of a spell strike doing an ungodly amount of amped imaginary weapon damage. I mean that's still pretty much the go-to, right?
Yeah.
All right.
It's just now that like if you fail that, you can just also do like really good skill actions on that person too.
You know what? If you really want to piss your GM off even more, figure out a way somehow to make it a beast gun. Just to make it the maximum level of what are we even doing here? God, God, that was like my favorite thing. Remember how I used to make like what is like, are you having
yeah.
sex with it or whatever? Like what is
pumpkin?
yeah, pumpkin. Yeah.
Yeah, season one was a time.
Yeah, season 1 was definitely a time. Yes, that's actually true. Okay, Magus. We were talking about the Magus. We gave it a nothing last time because it was not a class.
So
no, we gave no, it was. We gave it a C, and we gave it a D last week. So Jackal and Karamak gave it a D. I don't like the Magus. I think it's boring. I think its play pattern sucks. I think casting cantrips endlessly is not a class feature and should never be a thing. Wave casting is sort of like, why is this here? I feel like the class needs archetypes to be functional, and Spell Strike to me is a one-trick pony that, again, probably gets better at this level because of all the stupid stuff that Darth was talking about with the aiding and all this other stuff. But my God, is it horrible. And if you were archetyping to pick up additional slots, now you've managed to convert all of your lower level spell slots into Sure Strike. So now you can actually do what your class is supposed to do. But my God, is it boring and repetitive.
Yeah, like it's just the best person in the one strike meta to throw everything into. Like even better, I think, than like we were saying like Inventor before and Gunslinger. Gunslinger just had extra. At least Gunslinger had like utility and stuff you could do with your reactions to be. This is just like you're doing one thing.
Yeah.
It does it really well.
But damage, strike is king, damage is emperor, death is god. So like in that meta, you know, it's I mean, that's it.
It's the best at that role. So
yeah. I just think
is that a fun, interesting role? I mean, to be fair, some people it is. They're like, "Oh man, I'm rolling so many dice here." But I played Starlit Span. I was like, it's my third backup character in season 1. I still played it too much in like the 2 sessions. I was so bored of it after 2 sessions. Like I couldn't deal with it anymore. So
yeah. Exakill says at this level, it does feel so much better than early levels. And I agree because if you're archetyping into it, now you can actually hit with those things. Although I will say wave casting starts to feel really bad at this point because like other people are like, you're like, hey, oh man, you've got 4 other levels of spells at 4 slots. You have 16 more slots than me. But yeah.
Yeah, that's why you just pick up imaginary weapon and you don't have to worry about it anymore.
And then it's a focus spell, and you're like, hey, look at that, we solved the issue. Technically, it's a cantrip, but yeah. Let's see here. Boothby says, and aren't there a lot less attack spells to spell strike with now? More are saves, right? But imaginary weapon isn't, so there's that. But as a class itself,
the ones that are there are still good. You just feel like Shippy's like, you look at your new spells, you're like, okay, I just picked the old spells again and put them in the high level slot. Because
legacy is valid content. It's a backwards compatible game. I'll just pick the one that doesn't have a save. Hey, look at that. Luigi says, agreed that the Magus has a very boring play pattern. Vin says, I'm fine with a spiked D because wave casting might be even worse than mutagens. I'm not going to go spike D, but it's powerful. I mean, it's
that doesn't like. I think it is A tier. It's not an interesting A tier, but it's the best at that specific role. You're just so pigeonholed into it. If you're playing, like, you could definitely go like, oh, I'm playing Sparkling Targe, I'm shielding and everything like that. You're just like not playing the class to its fullest potential. So
Vin says, I played Magus for about a month. Fucking loved it. Numbers go burrs. Its own kind of fun. But I retired him because he's too broken. Boothby says, allowing legacy content. Y'all are too nice to your players. Boothby, I'm just following the guidelines of Paizo, who clearly told me this is not a new edition. Okay? Everything is legal for all time. Nothing that you purchased will ever not be allowed. So I'm just doing what I'm doing. All right. Well, I personally think as a play pattern, the class is a D. From like a sheer absolute power level, it's an A. And since this is about the mechanical components of the game, I'm gonna settle at a B. So I think that's where we're gonna go for that. All right, couple classes left. We've mentioned this class several times. No one's actually ever played it. They just archetype into it. Psychic. We gave it a C 2 years ago. We gave it a C last week. I imagine we're gonna give it a C today.
Yeah. My only notes on the Psychic are Psychic. I put a question mark beside it, and I said Archetype is really good. That's my only notes on Psychic.
I mean,
I've seen one Psychic being played. It wasn't that special. Like, I think you can do like Unleash Psychic. You can get some damage off. It's just like you're actually the worst at using imaginary weapon, which is kind of shitty. But
Right.
Like
The psychic is the least effective class at using the psychic spell that the class has become known for.
yeah, it
I
just
mean,
the best things you get, someone else can just pick up with an archetype and do better than you. So.
Yeah, because the class is so focused on the focus spells and that area of it, that means that it's very easy to archetype it to. It is an occult caster. That is a thing. Yeah, I feel like the Unleash Psyche
it gets,
thing
like,
is
less slots though too, right?
Right,
Because
it gets one less slot because
yeah.
the focus spells are good. That's like the
And then
Hey,
they are really good, but
yeah. Psychic was the MVP in one of my community games, but primarily because of imaginary weapons. My friend built a mid-tier Psychic. He had the same problem with the play pattern as a Magus. I could agree with that. Luigi says, I think the subclasses are good. I do think they were interesting, but the feats are very subpar, and that's pretty much par for the course here. And I agree with Damien. I'd just rather be a bard. Yeah. So we'll give it C. All right. The monk. No idea. I always felt like monks were kind of feat dependent. So, right, in theory, they should be better here, but we'll see. We gave monk 2 years ago, we gave monk B. Last week, we gave monk a B. So where are we at? I have no idea. I've never, like, a Danny was a monk for like up to level 5. And other than that, I haven't played with a monk. So
Are we
Jekyll?
Are we holding fortress shields?
No, but I mean, yes. I mean, God, that's up there with like the Barbarian and heavy armor.
I mean, some of the feats are good.
Yes, I think this tier is when Reflexive Stance comes online, so you can like, if you're Mountain Stance, you also get heavy armor now, so you're not like you can actually do the stuff you want to do. You can pick up some wrestler feats and do some really cool stuff, but like at that point, like the Barbarian actually just does it better than you because the Furious Bully is so strong. But yeah, like Jackal said, you can at least use a shield while you're using all that stuff. So
Monk can strike 4 times, says Boothby. It must be S tier. Mid-tier monk starts doing dumb things with athletics, I guess. And Damien says, this is where the monk becomes the ultimate battlefield control class. Here's the problem I have with that. Imagine a monk with all these feats and a really high athletics. And imagine the kind of battlefield control it can do. Now imagine someone casting a single wall of stone. Right? Like,
honestly, as someone, every time I play a martial, I always go the trip, grapple route, all of that stuff, because I find that stuff really fun. Like in Pathfinder 2e, it's worse than striking. Like I gotta be honest with you. Like it is. You're like at 95% though. Like it's not like you're that far behind just striking. You're still gonna contribute, but it just is. So
yeah,
and you're not even the best at doing this wrestling stuff. So
yeah, Vin says strike is king. Sim says, no, I love getting to miss an extra time. And then Nick said, that is the true monk experience. I don't know what I would do for the monk.
I would just say C. It does stuff.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean,
I think it's like a champion.
Yeah. It does feel a lot
and
like the champion.
Its AC is good. Its saves are good. You know, the picking your save thing can actually matter depending on your campaign if you know something's going to come up, right? So
yeah,
and I think at this level, this is where you actually pick the second one that goes to expert. So
yeah,
or whatever.
And again, remember, C means totally fine.
Yeah.
It's just I just don't see that the monk, like, is the monk gonna be actually a better battlefield controller than some of these spellcasters, or
and it's not even better than the Barbarian.
And are they gonna be a better striker than the rogue or the Barbarian or the fighter? I don't think so. Like, I could see an argument for B, but I just don't. You'd have to like really point something out to me that like makes that difference and makes that distinction. Nick says the monk in my game constantly tripped himself by mismanaging map with his non-agile stance. Right, that's the true Pathfinder 2 experience. Not only when you don't do anything, but because you chose to do something, you actually end up in a worse position than had you just said, I do nothing. I do nothing. The monk is unique in getting standstill. Is that right?
Yeah, but I don't think standstill is. I think standstill is a little bit worse than attack of opportunity. So I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, because standstill only triggers on moves, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't and they have to like leave the square or something, right? It doesn't trigger on like spellcasting.
Yeah, the only thing is it does like every move and stuff like that. So there's times where you stand still will trigger, and it also disrupts the move, whereas like attack of opportunity can only disrupt the like manipulate action. It just like you have less chances to use it. Strike is king. It just
What I would have loved to do, what I would have loved to see for the monk, is to make monk the reaction class. Right, to make the monk like they start at like level 1 with like 2 reactions, right? Like I would love to see them be the class that is kind of versatile, but in a turn initiative order, that they can move, you know, in response to things, that they can make strikes, that they can debuff people. You know, I would love to see them carve out that niche in the game, because then they're not just like, well, you're striking, but in a different way than the other classes that are striking. You know, you're grappling, but in a different way than the Inventor's grappling with his hammer ton thing, his hammer lightsaber. So yeah, like I think that there was a mechanical niche there that they could have engaged with, and they didn't. And I also am a big fan of reactions, and I think that would have made the monk feel very cool.
Honestly, that's like the one cool thing about Inventor is it like it's not good. It's still worse than AOO. But I wish that Paizo had that philosophy with those reactions and stuff. It gets a unique version of AOO.
It does
versus everything else. Yeah.
Oh, what's it get?
It only works on concentrate, and then you can like unstable it to make it disrupt on a hit. But then fighters can eventually just take that with disruptive stance. But like if they're standstill, there was that Inventor one. Fighters got something else. Barbarian got another one where like when you get hit, you can do or something like that. That'd be like super. They could all be different. Now they just all use AOO. So.
And of course, also Damien, I can't give the monk a B simply because its movement buff is a status bonus, which means it doesn't stack with all the common spells that everybody else takes to get movement bonuses. So they're not even moving like that fast.
Yeah, like you save money on the level 2 tailwind.
The level 2 tailwind. Nick says, I mean, if what it does is punch and kick, C, and that is pretty much what it does. And it occasionally grapples, maybe, if it makes the check.
I do say the Spirit Warrior archetype steals a little bit of the monk shine.
Is that lets from you? What class is Spirit Warrior from? Or is that just an archetype?
It's like from an AP, I think, and then it got like nerfed a bit. Is that the one, right? No, I'm thinking of Jalmiri's Heaven Seeker or whatever.
No, it's the one that basically gives you flurry of blows.
Yeah,
but with a sword, with a weapon and a punch.
I also fundamentally disagree. This is my hot take. I fundamentally disagree with the idea that you can make a monk that is just martial arts, that is not key focused, because that's just a fighter punching, right? Like, and they're better at punching than the monk anyways. So like for me, the monk is defined by these supernatural abilities. It's defined by these crazy abilities. And back in the day, again, I get it. You could take these feats, but a lot of them are worse now. But like, sometimes I feel like they've diluted these classes so much by trying to make them everything to everyone. Like Ranger, pick a fucking lane. Is it a spellcaster or is it not a spellcaster? Like you can't have it both ways. I personally feel that way. And like in the old days, like, the monk got Stunning Fist, which was actually good. And like, you could just stop it right there because it was really good. And now Stunning Fist sucks, in my personal opinion. But
it takes up so much time for like one time every like 5 levels is going to go off and stun someone for 1.
Right. It was, but like in 3rd edition or Pathfinder 1, I mean, monks were all, Dimension Door to the Wizard, stunning strike it, you stunning them. They are stunned. They drop everything they're holding, they're flat footed. They get a +2 to attack them. They don't get their turn. I mean, it was awesome. And then, then you'd like key run up a wall and like, it was, now it's like, mountain stance. I'm going to choke you out. And anyways, like when everyone talks about like the cool unarmed shit and they're like taking wrestler, like actual Nacho Libre, wrestler moves. That's the class that's the class that people think of when they think of cool unarmed to combat. Like that tells me you've missed the mark.
Yeah, the only thing is I'm sure someone will comment this defending the monk. Like monk has flurry of maneuvers or whatever. It's just not like everyone has like these like crashing slam or whatever it's called now. The fighter gets and stuff. Furious grab. Those things are just so much better than flurry maneuvers now. So
yeah, I agree. All right, 4 left. Summoner. F. No. Summoner 2 years ago, we gave Summoner a C. Last week, we gave Summoner a C. Summoner at mid levels. So now all your stupid shenanigans, you're still a wave caster, so that's starting to become an effect, but your Eidolon in theory is,
is a martial. You're just a martial with a little bit of spells.
Right. So
Kind of a gift.
basically you're a fighter that's not as good who has taken an archetype to get some spells, but they're a little higher level.
Also, you're a plant, probably.
Yeah, you're picking plant. Angel's like okay. But
Can I? You want to hear my number one problem with the summoner? It doesn't summon anything. The Eidolon is just always there. The Eldamon trainer is a better summoner on every possible level. And I'm if you don't like the stupid Eldamon, thing, number one, fuck you. Squirrel Ash and I will have words with you. But like, just go take the Eldamon trainer and repurpose it as a summoner and call that your summoner. And it's be a lot cooler. Like, it's just they don't summon anything. You know what I used to do as a summoner? I played a summoner in PF1. I was a gnome summoner named Ebix. Okay, he was awesome, and it was like a tilt. And you know what I did? I summoned monsters all the time. It was awesome. Like, that's what I did. And summoning was pretty broken in 3rd edition. I'm Pathfinder 1. I get it. But like, it doesn't summon. It just doesn't summon.
You don't summon your Eidolon.
Right.
Yeah,
if your Eidolon,
and if you go unconscious, the one time you have to summon your Eidolon, it feels so bad because you spend your entire turn manifesting it again.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, you just gotta like, it is just base. You have a base martial with some spells. I think it's a C. Like, I'm sure Strat's gonna come in somewhere and say it's S tier or something. But like
Right.
It did get hurt with the remaster because they nerfed all those knockdown and grab abilities.
Boom, D.
No more plus grab.
I mean, again, it can cast from I think it can cast from any tradition, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like it has like,
all right,
those spells.
C,
like, yeah,
C minus.
Yeah.
because you're right. It used to get monster knockdown and monster grab, but they nerfed monster grab, right? And they nerfed monster knockdown, right?
And also at this level, like I said with the other ones, this is the level that all the other marshals start getting. That's like, they can only get one of those things, but like, this is the level they start getting those things. So
yeah,
Crashing Slam, so good.
Yeah. Let's see here. Damien says, unless Summoner and Magus get the additional casting that Battle Harbinger gets, then they are strictly worse wave casters. Which is fair. I don't like wave casting anyways. Vin and I are very much agree with that. I think that was a huge mistake. Let's see here. Let's see. Vin, Damien says I'm fine with F. Self-confessed Cynic says I'm fine with F. We're not going to go to F.
But yeah, just on wave casting, my Fortune PF2E game is you can spend 10 minutes to get multiple slots back.
I'd rather be,
and it's still like, okay.
Yeah, I'd rather be a champion or a druid.
Still, so yeah,
I'd rather be
wave casting is still iffy.
Yeah,
so.
I'm putting it to D. I'd rather be all these other classes. Maybe not Inventor because I just fundamentally disagree with it. But champion, druid, wizard. All right, not investigator because again, fundamentally, those are my personal hangups. Yeah, I'd rather be those classes because at least they're very good at what they do. The summoner just feels like it's. I mean, Strat playing a class is not a bar. Like,
well, yeah. Also, like there was like an important thing where it was all it was very short days, which wave casting didn't matter because of that. And there's like this ruling where he could like put archetypes on his Eidolon and get feats on his Eidolon. That doesn't work.
Summoner D.
Yeah.
If for no other reason, then it doesn't summon. But it's also again fundamentally, it's you're down a lot of spell slots compared to the other casters. Your Eidolon is functions, but it's not as good as any of these other martial classes. So and getting a couple extra spells for that isn't going to make up the difference for that. So all right, 3 to go. Swashbuckler. We gave it a B 2 years ago, and we gave it a B last week. I mean, now you can get Panache for free.
Yeah, like I think that is a huge buff, though. Like tumble through just always gives you Panache now, so you just get Panache on your stride. This is the level where you start getting +2 to all your skill checks that deal bravado Panache stuff. That you get they get like targeting finisher now, which is really good.
So let's make this really easy. I know Swashbuckler has a bunch of stuff on it, but it only does one thing, which is damage. I mean, it's a damage dealing class. I mean, for all of its bells and whistles, it is a different flavor of dealing deeps. Does the Swashbuckler perform at the level of the Barbarian? or the rogue or the fighter?
No, I think it's solid B.
Then it's a B.
Yeah, B plus maybe, but yeah, still
all right.
B.
I'm curious that we gave it a B last time.
Yeah, that's surprising. B
Yeah, look,
remaster, it was like an F. So, I've seen so many people just try to get panache their entire turn and not even get it during that turn, and they did absolutely nothing. So.
Right, exactly. And without panache, it was like a joke.
Yeah.
Right. Again, it was one of those classes that had to like jump through a bunch of hoops to still be worse than the fighter.
Yeah.
Or the rogue. Who
Yeah,
just
the one
like,
meme
right,
is the
like,
best meme,
like
yeah.
one of my favorite things. I remember this argument actually happened in chat. Someone was like, "No, the rogue and the fighter have to do something. They have to get into melee range." And I went, "So does every other melee class in the game." Oh, the barbarian and the swashbuckler don't have to get into melee range. I forgot. Yeah, like of course they do. Kojo, we are doing mid-level, which is level 8 through 14. So basically, kind of that expert to master level, right?
This is around the time for Swashbuckler. I'm a big having your shield up all the time. So Buckler Dance level 10.
Oh yeah,
baby.
yeah.
Daring Do pretty solid at level 10. If you have,
let me take a look at these. Let me take a look at these. Daring Do.
Yes, basically when you have panache and you do a bravado skill thing that your circumstance bonus applies to, you get to roll at
Twice.
advantage.
You get to roll twice. We don't say advantage here.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can stack that with like the +2 to your skill check, all your skill checks that do the bravado stuff too.
Well, that's pretty
so
good.
you look at advantage with +2, which means you're basically guaranteed to get your panache. You're guaranteed to like demoralize someone or something. Yeah.
Boothby says, "I felt quite like a swashbuckler when I was a dueling style fighter." And yeah, like if you're a duelist style fighter with like the one, the free hand, and you take all like the, things that let you raise your weapon as a shield and all that other stuff. Like, isn't that just what a swashbuckler is? Anyways, all right, 2 to go. The Thaumaturge. It was pretty brand new, but we gave it an A 2 years ago because we were all hyped about the Thaumaturge. Last week for low level, we gave it a B, so we were a little bit more conservative for that. So it's, we had it at a B or an A. Obviously at mid levels, you now have potentially your third implement.
Yeah, level 11.
Yeah.
And so and that's also where you can get the choice, right? You can go to master in the one, or you can get 2 like experts or whatever.
I think you always get the master one, but you could like pick which one you get master, and you always get like extra. You have 3, and then one has like its second tier ability, and then 2 have their first tier ability, I believe.
Yeah. So that's a lot of options,
Honestly, like all the powers in that first one though. So I think the lower levels, I think you guys underrated it. That AOO is like amazing. Like level 1 or 2, you just win fights with AOO. That's why fighters so good at those low levels. But it's just like other people have AOO now. That was like the one thing that Thaumaturge was super good at. I think low levels. It has that you can get that like lore book, which is really good too. But like,
there were 8 other implements.
I'm just saying C tier. Like, you're not going to feel bad playing it. You just don't do anything outstanding.
Interesting. So. Jekyll, how do you feel?
Well, I do love the recalling of knowledge with charisma.
Right, but God forbid the alchemist attack with int.
I think it's solid B. I think because the damage is solid, and you get to choose a lot. You have a lot of versatility with your other implements.
The
handedness stuff is a little weird, but anyway.
Yeah, well,
but they like kind of like thick.
Thaumaturge is such an example of like where Paizo design is now, and it's so much more like 4th edition D&D, where they can like, I was holding my mirror the whole time. I was actually holding my chalice. Here you go. Oh, put it back, like because they understand. They're like, oh, that doesn't work, because you can only hold 2 things at once. Does them being able to like find a weakness even when they don't have a weakness matter more or less at this level when more creatures have resistance and vulnerability?
I think it's just kind of the same. Like actually, I'd say at this level it's actually like useful now. Like low levels, sometimes it's not even useful because the monster is so low HP anyways. It doesn't matter. This level it starts to become useful. I just don't think it's like you're paying costs for that damage, and it's worth the cost that you're paying. It just doesn't, because you're paying those costs. It doesn't put you above anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, like the first rank implements, some of them like basically just weapon,
puts you
above everything. But like this one, you're like I forget what it's called. When you spend one action, you can upgrade your what's it called? It's like the level 9 upgrade, I think, where like you can spend one action when you have if you hit someone or something, and you can intensify vulnerability, I think it's called.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
though none of those are really that good. You're just still doing the same stuff you were doing lower level. It's just some other people caught up to you now. So that's my take.
Yeah, the other thing is, you know, the 9th level ability is Intensify Vulnerability, which is +2 status bonus to attack rolls against the target of your exploit vulnerability.
Yep.
That does not stack
Yep.
with Heroism 6, or, you know, Inspire Courage has been bumped up or whatever. So it kind of doesn't do anything.
Yeah, exactly. Like the other 2 action things, like if you're a sniper's aim, it's circumstance bonus. So
Right.
that's why it's actually good. So
Yeah. So that's interesting that it doesn't. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
yeah,
Maybe.
so like all the I think, but the book is the only one that I think that scales kind of well.
Yeah.
Like wand, you just never picked it in the first place.
Ooh, where were-
The drink is kind of okay, but it's worse than heal. It's like
So we've got a lot of people in chat. We got some Necron tier is saying A or B tier. I don't think we're going to go to A, but it was originally A, so we'll put it in there. A, B, or C. I think we can all agree it's not D tier.
No.
But it's somewhere between A and C. It's actually I could actually see that being sort of. I don't think it's A tier myself personally. I do appreciate the design, but again, at a fundamental level, most of the time, a Thaumaturge is there to do one thing, which is deal damage. And if you jump through all your hoops, you might do as much damage as a Barbarian, maybe?
I think you're behind Barbarian.
Okay.
And you're behind Rogue.
Well, you're
Because
definitely behind Rogue. Yeah, we can all agree. on that.
You're like having nothing in your one hand makes you like your one-handed a two-handed weapon again, and then I think if they have like a super high weakness, I think you end up doing more. But you also
Right.
spent an action to do that.
Right. And that's a tax. And we know that the Barbarian doesn't have to pay that tax, right? Whereas the Thaumaturge has to exploit, right? That's an action tax in that respect. They don't have to do it, but
when you get high levels and like you get a bunch of stuff on these, you recall knowledge every turn, you share your weakness with everyone, that's when it starts to become really good. At these mid levels, those feats aren't active yet. So
Michael says too much fiddly for what you get. And we've seen people, Damien's been talking about this the whole time. He's like, I won't play the class just because it's just too much to fucking track, you know? Like, there's a mirror, but which one's me? But you don't know. But the GM does know, but you don't know. It's secret player knowledge. It's like, well, no, wait, how does that work? Like, it's a cool idea and a cool concept, but then it's like,
it puts you equal.
Oh, by the way, that reminds me, going back to the Summoner, another reason to D tier. At mid levels, there's a lot more AoEs.
It's true.
Kojo says, I think Thawm is C for complicated tier. What level can a Thaumaturge share its weakness with the rest of the team?
Well, I think there's one feat that does it where you spend one action now. I think that's like level 18 or something. I just remember Awesome had it in season 2. And that's what made it like really good, where everyone was triggering weaknesses, because the final boss, I made him have like a weakness like 100 or 200 to something. So everyone was dealing like an extra 200 damage on everything.
There is a level 10 feat.
Yep, it's called ubiquitous weakness. It's level 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is like really good, but it's level 20. So like.
All right. Well, 52% are saying B, with 14% saying A and 33% saying C. So the chat is saying B.
I can live it.
But no, you're the one. You're the ones on the. You guys are on the show. If you guys both tell me C, I'll move it to C.
Jackal's also saying B, I think too, right?
Okay.
So.
All right. We'll put it low B. We'll put it low B. Jackal, any final defense?
No. I think it's doing damage plus stuff, and I like the plus.
Yeah.
So
plus stuff is fun.
The utility stuff is good, like that recall knowledge stuff, like the lantern. You can find secret doors. But
does the Thaumaturge become less useful when you've played Pathfinder 2 for a long time and you already know what everything is?
Well, some people like to do the not metagaming, so I'm going to make bad player decisions, and then they can just play a Thaumaturge.
Right, but aren't you metagaming? Because you're
it
using your player knowledge to make a decision. It's just a bad one. So you're still metagaming.
That's very silly. But those people can play a Thaumaturge.
Right.
They'll just play the class that learns everything.
Right.
It
But that's what I'm
makes them
saying.
feel better.
Well, right. But then once they've done it, like you go, I've been running this game for 3 years. You're like, oh, that thing? Yeah, that thing's vulnerable to electricity. I know that.
Yeah, and then like by the rules of you're doing that, like if you fight a devil, when you fight that devil next round, you have to figure out if you can recall knowledge to know if it is. So it's like even if your character's seen it before, you still have to read.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, remember, that's the thing about recall knowledge. You know everything. You're just recalling if you remember it in this moment of crisis. So anyways.
GMs out there on YouTube, do not punish your players for being knowledgeable at the game that they're playing.
GMs on YouTube, do this. Recall when someone uses recall knowledge, success they get 2 questions, failure they get 1 question. No critical failure, no critical success. Maybe change that if for people who have like there's a lot of ways to get free recall knowledges every turn and stuff like that. But like that, I think that's like the best change I made for recall knowledge. So.
Right, and I think we talked about that like when we first started this channel. I was like about recall knowledge and treating it like a gather information role from Forged in the Dark, right? Where like the quality of the information, but you always get to ask a question, you know? But
don't do the 4E way where it's like a free action because then that feels really bad because the best thing to ever do in every fight is recall knowledge on every single thing.
Every single turn.
Yeah.
Them making it an action, I actually thought was good.
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah.
Because then when it was a free, well, what do I know about him? Well, what do I know about him? Do you even have that knowledge? No, but I can do it untrained. And I was like, that was really bad. Kojo asks a great question, which could be an entire stream unto itself, Kojo, which is where does system mastery differ from metagaming? That's a great point. And Kojo did say Arcane Mark literally had an episode about metagaming earlier this week, and they warned against metagaming against yourself. So we're going to go with Thaumaturge B- is where we're going to go. And that brings us to the Ranger. We gave the Ranger a C, and then last week we gave the Ranger a D because the Ranger had an opportunity to be great, and they gave them fast reloading at level 14, which we are now in the mid tier. So can the Ranger finally compete now that it can cinematically, tactically maneuver and lock and load that crossbow at level 14?
Yeah, I think the real thing you want, like I think it's 12 or 14, is this is where you can get shared prey,
right?
Which is I think the one
So
saving grace.
The moral of the story for the classes that we're talking about, the Thaumaturge Ranger, is that you can give your cool thing to other people who can use it better than you can.
Yeah, but like honestly, it's like doing a buff. I think that's really cool. Some people will hate that, but I think that's really cool. If it's like I gave you that damage, I gave you that flurry you hit because of this thing I gave you. It's the same thing as casting heroism on someone. But
yes. But also kind of no, because like if you're a ranger, that's supposed to be, your thing, to a certain extent. I don't know.
I guess I like playing the support guy. I know that's definitely not everyone's jam though. So
no, and that's fine. And one of these days we'll have to actually look through Iron Heroes. Iron Heroes had a hunter class that was actually more like a leader and was kind of like a buffing class. But the Ranger is just so all over the place because it's like, what is this class even supposed to be? Well, it's a really good archer and two-handed weapon fighter. Don't we have an archer? Don't we have a fighter who can dual wield better than this guy? Like, what is this class supposed to be? Oh, they're the pet class. Are they? No, they're not. Well, they have warden spells, which suck. Like, I just think it's
I think it's just baseline. I think it's a C tier. Like it's nothing's putting it behind.
Yeah.
But...
I mean, we have generally speaking accepted the fact that the Ranger does get better as it gets higher level.
It gets better once it hits like 17th level.
Yeah.
When it gets its edge. Yeah. Which is so great. You get like your bonus at level 1, and then you don't get anything from your subclass until level 17. It's like insane.
Right. It's nothing, not so. So AH says C. I'd rather play a Ranger than an Inventor. All right. Let's see here.
AH Inventor's really fun. Pick that freehand reach grapple thing. It's actually dope. I loved it. That was probably my favorite time playing.
Damien says, Damien, it's so funny how you have your pet classes, right? Like I know them because you're always in chat, like defending them, standing for them. Like you're always just like defend, like, and the Ranger is one of them. And not just the Ranger, the fucking crossbow Ranger. This guy will not leave the crossbow Ranger alone. And here he is saying that he's saying Ranger's really good at mid-tier, running reload, multiple prey, share prey. Yeah, Yeah. No, again, I'm not a problem with people doing support stuff. I'm just saying it's a little strange to me. It's a little weird when like the class is like, look at you, you're the master of death. You're actually not that much of a master of death. Why don't you give it to somebody else? Like
I see what you're saying. Like if the wizard gave someone else the ability to cast your arcane spells for you, right?
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rather than actually buffing. Yeah, I see your point. So.
Yeah, and that's where it's kind of like, yeah, I get it, but it's also kind of not the thing.
But I will say, like the melee ranger does like do well though. Like it is like a decent class. So.
Comparing the math between double slice fighter and flurry ranger is a significant chunk of what turned me from a PF2 game master to a PF2 spectator. So monster lore ranger, I have a particular hatred for. I feel like the outwit ranger is probably like one of the worst things in the game. The Thaumaturge is better at like every possible, like the Thaumaturge came in and just shit all over everything that the ranger was supposed to do.
That's what I was gonna say.
You're giving up the ability to strike better for like a +1 bonus to recall knowledge.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That just like you can fix Inventor by taking the Thaumaturge, making everything intelligence, and reflavoring everything in technology, you can similarly fix the Ranger just by being the Thaumaturge and flavoring it that you're a Ranger.
Right. Make weapon implement, melee weapon, make wand, range bow, make mirror or whatever like that, like camouflage.
Just make it environmental, exactly.
But going back, did someone say comment that there's PF2E spectator? What the hell's that even?
Yeah, maybe they just watch other people play Pathfinder
like
too.
Go down to your local game store, just watch people play.
So for me, Bob played a ranger several times, and Bob wanted to be like a monster hunter ranger. And he wasn't an outwit ranger, but he was the precision ranger with a great weapon. It's pretty cool. And he had a bear too, so the bear would get the precision. It was pretty nice. This was a little leveled. And he took Monster Hunter, which is like one of the worst feats in the game, and they didn't fix it. And what I did, which I thought was really cool, was basically I fixed other parts of the ranger. When Bob did a hunt prey, because it's an action penalty, I let him make it a free recall knowledge against that. And because he was the ranger, instead of him having to have 18 different knowledges for this to be useful, right? Because he failed like every single time. So at the end of when he made it again, we just made it to this like ranger lore, right? Lore ranger. And it was just like, these are the monsters that you hunt, monster lore, something like I think we call it. Then when he hunt prey, you get a free reaction. But also if he hunted a prey, that prey, if somebody attacked that prey, he could aid them as a reaction without having prepared the aid. In fact, the hunting prey counted as basically having perpetual prepare to aid. So basically, like as you're coming into attack, he'd be like, hit it there, like on the the weak flank, and he'd just shout out this like advice to them. That was pretty cool. That's nothing what they did in the remaster. They had like a million they were really concerned about the reload time while you're striding at level 14.
Where is Nightfinder at? Come on now. Let's go.
Yeah.
It's right after Battlecry 3.
Yeah, it's right after BC 3. Yes. So Ko just said, so that character was a coach. Well, it was more like they were calling the play. They were kind of like the QB, like when they're focused on a prey, they're like, I'm going to tell you how to take this thing down, but I'm also going to take it down. Like I'm also going to be things. So yeah, I think that, that to me, that was a lot of fun. That was actually a cool way to make the Ranger fun. And it was lower level, but other than that,
But yeah, so what I'm hearing is you did a bunch of buffs to it to make it like a B tier.
I made a bunch of buffs to it to make it like a high C, Yes, exactly. Like a tactician leader, like the Captain America. Like I didn't feel like you needed like the marshal character, like the warlord or, marshal, like you could, or what a commander is what they're calling it. So I just like, hey, why don't we not have 37 classes in the game and just like make the classes that actually are in the game do something. Vin says his vote remains a spite D. They could have fixed it and they chose not to.
Like, I swear there's someone at some point that said something in one of the remasters discussions that they're going to look at all this hump prey stuff and fix it. And then
they did.
Afterwards, they said, oh, yeah. No, we looked at it. Yeah, it was fine. You can only AOO your hunted prey. It's fine. It's good. It's like...
I hate this class.
Disrupt Prey is like the fucking worst.
Like, at least it's a little bit stronger, but like it's so restrictive for that little bit of strength you get from the.
Let me put it this way: there should never be a point in the game where you're like, "Oh, my ally killed the monster." You know, like, you know, like it's just crazy to me, like that. I don't know. It's not great. It's not great, and I also feel like you should be getting like, I don't know. I also just fundamentally this is all Rangers. I don't know why. You know, actuality, if you were like in the woods and you were fighting, like 2 weapons would be terrible. Like that's not even close to good. It's almost close to never good in any situation. But if like you're fighting animals, presumably, you know, because you're in the woods, like you should be like a master of like the spear or like the bow, not like twin scimitars. Like what the hell? That doesn't even make sense. Yeah, I'm gonna go fight this bear with a twin. It's just stupid. But it says it's also as dumb as the investigator picking their lead. I'm hunting you. Now I can attack you quickly with 2 weapons. I agree, which is why, if it was up to me, hunt prey would be, well, number one, the ranger, I would throw it away and I would like replace it with WoW Hunter, basically. And hunt prey could essentially be some sort of like aim action. And they would be a primary range class, which I think makes sense for a hunter. You know, unless of course it's Paizo, so they'd have some, you know, subclass that uses like spears or something like that. But like it'd be a hunter and it would use ranged, and you could like spend an action to like give your next attack advantage or something. You know, like you can aim, and like that'd be cool. But anyways, but yeah, it would just
or even just like the 5e treatment, where I think in 5e, like it's a spell though, but like if you kill that thing, it just automatically moves to someone else. I think so. Like if they're gonna have it, just do the barbarian treatment where it just becomes free now.
I just like. What is happening when you're hunting the prey? Like what? Because it's only 2 seconds, right? But somehow
I'm gonna hit that one.
But somehow you swinging your swords around becomes a whole lot more accurate when you've looked at them in a particular way for 2 seconds. Now I get it; it's a game, but at least we can fundamentally kind of understand what rage is. Except now rage is automatic, but hunt prey somehow isn't. You know, if the Kineticist loses their aura, they can bring it back, but they also get a refunded 2 action blast, or impulse. So, you know, what's the deal there?
Like I said last time, they should ditch the flurry part. That's a monk. Monks attack a lot.
Right.
And then you take the hunting part with the gunslinger's big accuracy part and put them together and make a class that's more interesting.
And you go from 27 classes down to like a reasonable number of like 14, so we can actually finish these things in 2 hours instead of 3. Ranger, executive decision, Spite D.
Love it.
So we're going Spite D.
The best kind of.
Yes, the best kind of D. Kojo says, that's my secret. I'm always angry. PF2E Rage 2024. And of course, Vin is excited because of the Spite D. So let's take a look where we're at. Now, compared to last time, we've actually grouped up a lot. In fact, actually, you could argue that at mid-tiers, things have gotten a little bit better. We don't have any Fs. So one of the Fs basically moved up, you know, in terms of sheer counts from F to D. We do have a little bit more Cs than we had more Bs, but that's because we have more A's and more S's. So I think this is a problem. And I think we'll see this in Remaster, which is some of the weak classes got better, which is good. And then some of the good classes got even better. Right? So like fighter and rogue and stuff. Like the witch needed it. Maybe they overdid it, but the witch needed it. The fighter, the rogue, you know, they did not need. If anything, they needed little nerfs, you know. So
and then my boy the wizard needed it and got nerfed.
The wizard just got spanked. Vin says so wild that they buffed the fighter and rogue like they did, and I love it. Yeah, I mean, I was never expecting them to nerf the fighter or the rogue. You know, I knew they wouldn't. They needed to, but they didn't. But for them to like, kind of like closet buff the fighter by getting rid of open, and then just to openly buff the rogue by making gang up better, like it's crazy. You know, it was crazy. But you know, now we're getting closer to that alt. I mean, if that was your party, gents, going into a PBX, fighter, rogue, cleric, witch. I think you would say that's going to be pretty good on a 4-man, you know?
Yeah.
And if you threw in any of the A tiers, a sorcerer, a barbarian, a bard as your 5th man, I think you'd be like, that's going to be a pretty competitive group.
Yeah, definitely. Like, which is nice. You at least get like different spellcasters up there compared to like having the sorcerer up there because he's just the best spellcaster at least. So
He says nobody remembered open anyways, so getting rid of it was only a theoretical buff. So anyways, yeah, I think we really did cover that some of these things got better and they didn't need to, and some of these things are sort of unfortunately hang on. A couple things before we wrap up, gents. So at this point, you know, you guys have been playing Pathfinder 2 for a long time, remaster for the last year. Overall, would you still stand by the assertion, which has been floated around the internet, that PF2 is the martial edition of D20, where the marshals are truly superior to the casters? Because when we look at this, you've got at A and S, you've got fighter, rogue, barbarian, but then you have sorcerer, bard, cleric, witch. So there's more S and A tier casters than there is martial characters. And
Well,
yeah,
most of, I think we had joked about this at some point in a previous stream, but you know, the story of your typical PF2E combat is surround the bad guys with marshals and attack them with weapons till they die, rinse and repeat.
right. That is like the Sun Tzu level of tactics.
So you know, having marshals to do that with is important. I do so I feel like I should have prefaced this before. I do think that like PF2E does what it does the best out of any game. I mean, maybe Strike is better, but anyways. And you know, if you are into crunchy tactical combat, that's a conversation we can have for another day. Crunchy tactical combat. You know, this is the game that you want to be playing. You have a lot of character building,
Right. And that's the
options.
other element. It's tactical, but there's also just, I mean, as far as I know, there is no D20-esque based game out there that has this many build options between all the archetypes, the class feats, the ancestry feats, the skill feats, the general feats. It's just like,
maybe like 4E if you go into all the zines and stuff.
yeah,
like that.
4E if you include all of Dragon Magazine, maybe. But even then,
that,
like
some intern made and it's like
Yeah.
absolutely broken.
oh, just completely nonsense. No, it's just complete nonsense. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because obviously power selection in 4E was, you know, a cool thing. Although I will say that I think that 4E characters were more defined by what powers they took than Pathfinder 2 characters are defined by the feats that they take. I think a lot of times, I still feel like feats are fairly, sometimes they're either like really great and use it all every fucking round for the rest of the game, or they're like super niche and they hardly ever come up. I mean, there obviously is a middle ground there, but I feel like a lot of feats, like in the characters I've played.
Oh, you muted, I think, Derek.
We got a lot of double slice and we got a lot of 2-action
There we
heal.
go. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, like used a lot of double slice. You lose a lot. So you're using the same feats over and over again. And then I looked at my fight, you know, like a fighter, or I had a different, you know, what else did I have? I can't remember. A monk. It's like, I forgot I had that feat, you know, like, oh, that's cool. You know, like blind fight. Sure. You know, if it comes up, great. Most of the time it's not going to come up, you know, like,
Yeah.
so
But you at least feel really good when it does come up. Like,
right.
You actually have that, like, you can point and see, like, I made this decision, is blind fight. I hit because I took blind fight. It does feel really good. So
yeah,
but,
and I think the best case scenario is where you're able to take these feats sort of mindfully, right? Like, oh, the campaign is transitioning. We're going to be doing a lot of Underdark adventuring. I bet you we're fighting a lot of drow that can cast darkness, or at least they used to be able to. I don't know if they can in Pathfinder 2 anymore. I'm going to take blind fight because I want to have that, you know, advantage, or, you know, to mitigate that sort of disadvantage. Just taking it randomly, blindly in the dark because randomly something might, you know, put you in concealment someday, or, you know, more than likely you won't even be in the dark. You'll have gotten hit by something that like dazzles you or something, you know, like. So yeah, Drow
What's
can't
the-
cast because they don't exist. Okay.
What's a drow? Yeah, that was going to be what I said.
Oh, good stuff. Anyways, Damien says PF2 made the rules made the rules enforce how you had to play the PF1 if the casters didn't want to make the marshals feel bad. Buff and crowd control. Yeah, that's fairly true. I mean, it is the case, right? I mean, most of the casters are in a secondary and supporting role in Pathfinder 1, but that could be very strong. But we look at the S tier and we look at the A tier. If I told you you were going into a PBX / extreme encounter and your party of 5 consisted of a cleric, cloistered, a witch, a sorcerer, a bard, and an oracle. Those are all S's and A's and one B.
Yeah.
Would you say that's a good party?
If you change those all to war priests, yeah. Yeah, no,
They'd get
like wall of stone doesn't work if you can't kill a thing.
right.
by the time
Wall
the
of
thing
stone,
comes out of
and then
wall
we
of
run
stone.
away.
How many Beastmaster archetypes do we have?
Whereas, if I told you that a party consisted of 3 fighters and 2 rogues, or
I still think you in that one you don't have heal. So
okay,
those extreme fights you can actually these levels. But
so Kojo makes a great point. So maybe you need a mix, or no, you need marshals and somebody that can cast heal.
Yeah.
Because if I told you had fighter, rogue, cleric, you'd be like, yeah, that'll play,
But yeah, like spellcasters are the best at like if you pick the right spells, like the Wall of Stones, the slows, the synesthesia, the slow 7, whatever, the heals, they can basically eliminate all the swinginess of extreme fights.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Michael says 3 fighter medics, 2 rogue medics. Maybe. I mean, battlefield medicine's okay, and
Who's got the hands for that?
Yeah, who's got the
Come on.
hand?
yeah.
Right, you got to have the
The
hand.
Inventor
Well, no,
with the free hand.
yeah,
so
they're all free hand fighters. There you go. There's an advantage. There's a secret nerf or buff to the monk, right? They can battlefield medicine really easily because they always have free things. So, yeah. So overall, I think we are seeing a shift up in the power rankings, which is good. But maybe not good because we're getting more and more S tier classes. Again, remember, I don't think S tier is necessarily a good place. I think it kind of demeans some of the other classes and creates balance problems. And, I've noticed a lot of Northern Reaches players tend to stay away from the S tier classes because they kind of want, the challenge mode, if you will, of being like, yeah, I want to take a class that nobody thinks is good. They're like that person that goes to a Magic the Gathering tournament. And they refuse to play the top tier deck because they're like, I want to bring my home brew and show these people that I can win with some piece of garbage,
and honestly, like PF2 is like the best system because even you bring these D tiers, like they're operating at like 97% efficiency or something. It's like it's so small.
Right.
That,
To be
like,
clear, only F tier means I don't think the
Yeah.
class can really function. D to me means this class works, but it has some serious systemic issues or problems that are not, that are kind of endemic to the way it is fundamentally structured. And then there are other classes that are doing their role or fulfilling their role in a much better capacity, such that to a point where if you are like a ranger and then there's a thaumaturge in the party, you might actually feel bad, right? Because you're like, man, this person knows more about everything than me, and when he hunts prey, it like does a bunch of damage and extra, like you're just like, I don't feel good about it, And yeah, I mean, Vin, you're right. I mean, this is a game. The math is tight. I mean, it doesn't take much to shift a class around, in terms of its effectiveness and level. But yeah. D is the system mastery to make them work tier. So, although you'd be tough with a ranger, I think.
Yeah, I still think Alchemist, you're not.
Yeah.
You're doing okay.
Yeah.
So
at a certain point, you run into the practical limitations of the system and the math and the game. So, all right. Whoople says they think the Alchemist is C. It was hotly contested, Whoople. You'd have to go back and discuss. But ultimately, it was Darth's clear insistence that it was a D.
yeah, like low levels, high levels, they fixed it.
Right.
These levels in particular are the shaky ones, I think.
When does the Alchemist get master?
It's 15.
15.
So,
Okay, so
they're,
that is
they're
our,
two. I believe they're 2 levels behind everything except for trained. It's technically like they get at 1, but
yeah. Okay, so yeah, so that's pretty shaky then. You know?
yeah. But like I mean that like I haven't seen in action yet. The Chirurgeon thing might be insane. So
Right.
like
Right.
yeah.
And we even as much Pathfinder 2 as these guys have played and I've played over the years, not recently, we still haven't seen every build. You know, like we just don't have to. And they've probably played with certainly probably more players than most people ever have in, you know, because like they're playing with not just like the same 4 PCs over and over and over again, right? They're playing with dozens and dozens of PCs over multiple seasons of PBX and Northman Challenge and Northern Reaches and the like. So yeah, cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We had a great stream. You guys really came out in support for Pathfinder 2, which I love to see. We crushed that goal. So God help us. More Pathfinder 2 is coming. You know, I think it would be fun to take a look at the spells because obviously that was our first, you know, massive 38, 42 live stream long series where we ranked all the spells, and frequently you would end up seeing me on the floor kind of like going like, why?
Like I think you at least they like a lot of the new spells are like they're not S tiers, but there's a lot of good like B A tier spells now. So
yeah. So real quick, as we end up, just real quick, any thoughts about some of the new classes that you've had a chance to play? The Animist, the Exemplar, any hopes for the? I know we talked about a little bit about this last time, Jekyll, but for Darth, it's his first time on. You know, you're excited. You mentioned your excitement for the Runesmith. You know, any thoughts about the Necromancer or the Commander or
like the next 4 classes, all 4 of them, I'm super excited for. I don't think all of them are necessarily going to hit the mark, but like flavorfully, like the Commander is the Warlord, the defend like it's an actual defender. Even though champion kind of gets there now with the archetype. The Necromancer, I always like Necromancers. Runesmith, like I said, it's just like insanely cool. I'm actually excited for all like compared to like I mean like I honestly didn't give a shit about Exemplar and Animus. It's like okay, I got a spirit with me, which is kind of it's not the summoner though. And then I also like some god died and his like blood leaked on me, and now I can like attack high better. I don't know.
I will say this: if you're coming to RPGs, even if you're not coming to RPGs, but if you've played like you know like any amount of like Diablo or an MMO or something like that, like the next classes are coming out, the tank, you know, the warlord, the necromancer, right? Like these are like kind of like staples of the genre that like weren't ever really in, you know, these games except for maybe a little bit like 4E. And so I, for one, am very excited about them. And also I think that it just continues to show off some of like the more 4E inspired design.
Yeah, they're rolling up their sleeves a lot with that.
Yeah,
like,
they're
a lot of the stuff they're doing. So
yeah, like Thaumaturge, I've still said that the Kineticist to me feel very different from the PF2 of 2019 or whatever when it released. So I think that's really excited. Jekyll, did you take a chance to look at the Necromancer or Runesmith at all?
Other than our boy I'm Prophet on stream, on the Necro stream, doing a great job. I do like the
Mr. Birdsong.
Yeah, the concept of I mean, I played a Necro in D2. I mean, the Corpse Explosion is awesome.
Who didn't play a Necro in D2? Who didn't cast Corpse Explosion?
Corpse Explosion, especially when it was first released. So good. Oh my god.
The way they did it too with like the thralls versus just like, oh, I'm gonna summon 50 million endless things. They're like, okay, we're gonna make them so they instantly die, so you don't have to track anything with them.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's clearly designed towards playability, right? Rather than the verisimilitude of actually emerging a corpse. Like they are continuing. I mean, I think that they were always doing this, but they are continuing to shit on verisimilitude with each of these new books, more and more and more and more and more and more. From esoteric lore using charisma to kineticist aiming fire blast with con. Like it's just continuing to become more and more gamey and less simulationist. Now, whether you like that or not, or whether you want to admit that or not, that's up to you. But let me know in the comments below.
Yeah, like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe and click the bell and then click the bell again and make sure you click all things because we do go live Tuesdays and Thursdays. So as a reminder, next week we'll be back. Tuesday, we're going to be doing a first look with a guest, Ben. We're going to be looking at troubleshooters. We've been talking a lot about Pathfinder 2, so it's important that we also have our channel videos that do poorly. So got to keep the patrons happy. And then next Thursday, the sort of penultimate high level play, which, to be quite honest with you, I have only played in one what I would consider to be true high level Pathfinder 2 campaign. So my experience there is quite limited, and I think that's the case for a lot of us. But in some cases, this is where the even in Paizo land, the gloves kind of come off a little bit, and you can start to see what we're really doing for it. In fact, in Southern Beaches, which is this year's Northern Reaches, the group hit level 17 this week. So everyone got their Apex items. So the next couple of weeks are going to be 17, 18, 19, 20. So the rest of the month of December is going to be the high level fun shenanigans. And the one of the true litmus tests is, hey, Pathfinder 2, it works at high level. Does it? And we can talk about that. So we'll have some guests on. If we have 3 or 4 people who want to make it, I know Whipple is supposed to make it. If you guys can make it next week, you guys are welcome. Come on, I'll redo the thing. We'll have like when we did level 10 spells and we had like 5 or 6 guests on. We'll just shout at each other and just ignore the chat. But yeah, I like what they're doing with the Necro. What is interesting is that the Necro is like historically it's like, well, that's a bad guy thing. You know, like you're summoning the dead. That's an evil act. And like I get that they got rid of alignment, but they didn't like get rid of like evil. You know what I mean? Like
I think like technically they got rid of like even in like base, it was never like even animate dead and stuff weren't evil. It was just like you're not reanimating a person and
you're
making
like
them fight
summoning a corpse.
Yeah.
It was very strange. But no one ever knew this because no one ever cast summon spells in Pathfinder 2. They're terrible. I don't know if there's a single good one in the entire game. There might be like one random weird level.
Yeah. I was gonna say Giant Skunk's good. For like the 2 levels, it's good. So, but yeah, no, I tried Forged PF2E. I tried completely changing it. We had Pumpkin was actually like the summoner there. Completely changed it up. Still doesn't work. I don't know. It's hard. It's hard.
All right. Well, Jackal, final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just more on the Necro, just a little bit. In the description, it says, while a necromancer's creations are merely a mockery of life, the undead are keen to serve their creator, which seems kind of strange. Anyways,
yeah, it's kind of evilly.
This Necro feels like a strike character. Anyways.
Oh, yeah, okay. Very cool.
Pathfinder 2, great game. The mid levels still solid. You get to enjoy the fighter life, getting all the feats. You get to enjoy casting slow and heal and synesthesia.
Would you say that of the 3 tiers of play, the mid levels are your favorite?
It kind of depends on like what kind of player you are. Like if you are like super
you personally.
Yes, because I think the monsters are more interesting.
Okay.
But they're not doing like
power word kill at will.
Exactly. Exactly.
Hello, Solar.
And you're kind of unlocking more of the your encounters are just more interesting in general, because the monsters are more interactive and the characters that players are playing also become more interactive. So I think it's a really fun time actually to GM and to play, and also like for the buildy people, like a lot of your stuff comes online, like you get all of the pieces of the puzzle that you really want, and then the clerics get to cast heal a lot. So hooray for them.
So Darth, same question to you, and any final thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, I think mid-level's probably I think it's probably the best levels if you want, like I've always tried to do the attrition thing, time matters, that type of thing. I think this is the best time because you just have enough tools to deal with stuff. And like Jackals, like I don't use too many bestiary monsters, but like that you have a lot more health and stuff to play with. They don't last for a little bit longer. I definitely like it. I like don't get me, I like the random bust session, like high levels and the fucking bone flail and everything like that. It's still like peak PF2E moments. But yeah, but the only other last thoughts I'd say is, if you're interested in Pathfinder 2E, and Derek did mention it, Southern Beaches. We just opened up a new zone, so come play if you want to play it. It's ABP, so you can join in whenever and have a good time. You won't be as good as everyone with like 20 free archetypes right now.
4, I think, is the most you can have. But look, it wouldn't be Northern Reaches if
Yeah.
And you know what? Here's the thing. I'm going to do you this. Right now, there are characters who've been playing for the whole season, and they have 4 free archetypes. And this is the most low-powered Northern Reaches season we've ever had. Because would you trade those free archetypes for Divine Speed or whatever it was called or whatever? Like,
Yeah, probably.
In
Yeah.
our-
yeah.
or a Tarrasque Blown Flail or
Honestly, like I think
Flame Guts.
everyone out there too, as a final thought, like I think you should like lean into like the crazy stuff. Like
Yeah.
the good thing is Pathfinder 2e has like a really solid baseline, and if you get familiar with it, you can figure out where you can like turn up the dial to make really cool items and stuff like that. And you can also figure out when not to turn stuff up, like the Divine Speed stuff that breaks it. But
Yeah, because remember, when they're designing this game, they're designing it to explicitly prevent assholes from ruining the game. But if you're playing with a group of people that you like and you're not a pushover GM, then it can be fun to feel rewarded and to get items and things that change the very nature of the game. And sure, it'll be, and more the better than that, it'll be your unique experience that, you alone can sort of enjoy. That's one of the reasons why Northern Reaches has always been so popular, I think, is because it's like Pathfinder Society, but it's also like a home game with crazy GMs making broken shit. So like that's kind of that sort of fun middle ground there,
Yeah. And you don't like when you're making something strong, it will be strong and the players will know it's strong and feel strong. Whereas like if you're in like 5e or something, like, oh, you get this cool thing, but oh, there's Warlock Sorcerer over here.
Right.
That's just
Exactly.
crazy. So
Awesome. Vin says that's why PF2 was my favorite system to house rule for a while. Yeah, because it does have a very solid base. And, I think we've continued to see that. So, all right. Well, Jackal, Darth, thank you so much for joining me. Your insights were very, very helpful. I appreciate you guys both being here. And to everybody else at home, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. Certainly very appreciated. We love having you here. And I know that some of you only come for the Pathfinder 2. But, listen, I'm just saying there's other games out there. You could combine them with Pathfinder 2 like Darth and do well for yourself.
yeah.
But
and honestly, check out Troubleshooters, as it is actually really cool.
yeah.
I'm actually playing in Ben's game.
Oh, you're
so,
playing in Ben's game. Okay. Yeah.
So
I don't
it's
know.
a really cool system.
Yeah. So if you're interested in Troubleshooters, next Tuesday we'll be here to talk about that new game system. And shout out to Vin, Marilyn, Merlanin, Cybersmith, Mindblown, and of course Whoople and Damien for their incredible support tonight, showing some love for PF2, and we really appreciate it. Thank you, Whoople, for the very generous super chat. Thank you to everybody who helped out. Jackal, you have one thing to say?
If you are a player of Pathfinder 2e, you might also be interested in a little game called Raid Shadow Legends. And there's just aspects of that game, tactical combat, character variety, character building,
Yeah.
You just might want to try it out. That's all I'm saying.
Let's see if we got an email back from them.
Ooh.
Let's see here. Let me go. Where's
Wait,
my
Derek, do you have like one of the special, like you can be an avatar in the game if you're like that big of a subscriber or whatever? Like I'm pretty sure Mr. Beast is probably in there.
So Bob sent them an email 8 days ago, and they have not responded. Maybe
They reached out to you guys.
They reached out to me. Yes. We also had somebody who wanted to collab with us from Evil Genius Game with Everyday Heroes, but I don't know really anything about that game. And also, quite frankly, I don't like games about like real life modern stuff. Okay. Anyways. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out with us. Let us know in the chat. Remember, these were our low level ones. This was our mid level one, so you can see the shift from low to mid. And of course, join us next week where we'll be back. Maybe some of these guys will be here again, but we're going to talk about the high level of the game, and we'd love to see all of your thoughts, your comments, your questions, and if you really want to yell at me, and you really want to tell Jackal and Darth that they are elitist know-it-alls who don't know anything about this game, and then you check out patreon.com/nicelastcall. You join, you come into our server, you immediately start trash talking us
adding us,
and just adding them. Everyone can add everybody on the server. You just come in to shit talk. You know what? I honestly, I'll tell you this. Come in at a $10 level, shit talk as much as you want, and then quit. I will respect the move. Okay. I will respect the hell out of the move. Okay. So yeah, that's my pitch to you. Come tell us that we're elitist fucks. All right. If you're not going to be here next week, I want to say I hope everybody has a happy holidays. I know that this time of year it's not just Christmas, but there's a lot of other holidays and Kwanzaa and Hanukkah and stuff like that starting and going around soon. So hopefully you all take some well-needed and rested time. I was benevolently blessed today as I saw a deluge of emails hit my inbox, and I was like, oh no. Nope. It was my manager and my project manager canceling all of our meetings and stand-ups for basically the next 3 weeks. So I was like, all right. Hopefully you get to take some time off and maybe play some games. In fact, if you want to play some high-level Pathfinder 2, you could still hop into Southern Beaches, roll up on a level 17 character, and start playing some 17 and 18. You probably have no idea what you're doing. 6
hours to make that character.
You probably have no idea what you're doing. But that's all right. If you have it ready to go in Path Builder, we're ready to take you in, and you'll get your Apex item. You'll get all of your APB bonuses. You won't have any other gear, but just go on 1 or 2 adventures, and you'll have a shitload of gold, and then you can buy a bunch of stuff. So, in fact, I'll probably open up the market, I think, for the last week or two as a kind of a Christmas present. Captain Deadeye might decide to be generous with the Christmas time. So we'll see how that goes. Any case, thank you, Jackal. Thank you, Darth. Thank you to all of you. And we'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call. Good night, everybody.